A Mafia king destroys the man who called her fat, but his obsessive protection might cost her more than her freedom. If you're watching from your city tonight, drop a comment below and tell me where you're from. I want to see how far this story travels. And if you stay until the end, you'll discover what happens when a broken woman stops apologizing for taking up space. Hit that like button, and let's begin. Chicago glittered like a kingdom built on diamonds and corruption the night Cara Vale stepped into the Heritage Crown Gala wearing emerald silk and quiet insecurity. The ballroom swam with champagne laughter, crystal chandeliers, and predators disguised as socialites. Cara hated every second of it, not because she didn't belong, because men like her ex-fiancé had spent years convincing her she never would. She stood near the towering glass sculpture in the center of the ballroom, trying to disappear into the crowd while her heart hammered against her ribs. The dress felt wrong, too tight, too revealing, too much. Everything about her felt too much tonight, which meant Damon would notice. He always noticed when she tried to exist outside the narrow box he'd built for her. 3 years. 3 years of starvation diets, broken mirrors, and sleepless nights disguised as love. 3 years of being told she was almost perfect. If only she'd lose 10 more pounds, wear looser clothing, laugh less loudly in public, stop embarrassing him with her presence. Cara had finally left him 6 months ago, but the voice in her head still sounded like his. She shouldn't have come tonight, but her best friend Maya had begged, pleaded, promised that showing up to Chicago's most exclusive charity gala would prove to everyone, including herself, that Damon Pierce hadn't broken her completely. Maya was wrong. The moment Cara saw Damon across the marble ballroom, tall and polished and handsome in that artificial way wealthy men often were, she knew coming here had been a mistake. He carried cruelty behind his perfect smile like a concealed blade, and when his pale blue eyes locked onto her, something predatory flickered across his expression. He started moving through the crowd toward her. Cara's stomach dropped. She turned quickly, weaving between clusters of socialites dripping in designer labels and borrowed confidence. Her heels clicked rapidly against the marble as she tried to put distance between herself and the man who'd spent years convincing her she was fundamentally unlovable. But Damon was faster. He intercepted her near the champagne fountain, his hand closing around her wrist with just enough pressure to hurt without leaving marks. He'd always been careful about that. "You really came dressed like that?" he whispered venomously, his whiskey breath brushing her cheek as the orchestra hummed softly behind them. "You're still too big for rooms like this, Cara. Honestly, you embarrass people just standing beside them." The words sliced deeper because they were familiar. Cara tried to pull away, but Damon's grip tightened. "I thought leaving me would teach you something," he continued, his voice dropping lower so no one else could hear. "But you're still the same pathetic woman who can't even lose weight properly. Look at you, that dress is struggling." Something inside Cara shattered. Not because the words were new, because even after 6 months of therapy, yoga, and affirmations whispered to her reflection every morning, Damon's voice still had the power to reduce her to nothing. She wrenched her wrist free and fled before he could see her break. The mansion hosting the gala sprawled across 3 stories of old Chicago money and Gothic architecture. Cara ran blindly through hallways lined with oil paintings of dead wealthy people until she found an abandoned library tucked away in the East Wing. She collapsed beside towering shelves of leather-bound books, while tears blurred the gold city lights outside the windows. She wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly feeling painfully aware of every curve Damon had taught her to hate. The sobs came quietly at first, then harder. She pressed her palms against her face, trying to muffle the sound, trying to hold herself together, trying to remember what her therapist had said about not letting other people's cruelty define her worth. But the words felt hollow tonight, because words couldn't erase the fact that she'd spent 3 years of her life with a man who'd made her believe she was fundamentally wrong. Too loud, too soft, too big, too much. Never enough. The library door clicked shut behind her. Cara froze. She hadn't heard anyone enter. Then a voice emerged from the shadows near the fireplace. Low, dangerous, calm enough to terrify. "Tears ruin beautiful faces, Bella." Cara's breath caught. From the darkness rose a man who moved like violence wrapped in expensive tailoring. His charcoal suit fit like armor over a predator's body, and when he stepped into the amber glow of the library's dim lighting, Cara's heart stopped. She recognized him instantly. Everyone in Chicago recognized Roman Vescari, the city's most feared mafia sovereign, a man whispered about in penthouses and police stations alike, a man who buried rivals beneath skyscrapers and bought judges before breakfast. His black hair was swept back from a face carved from brutal angles and dangerous beauty, and his eyes, pitch black and unreadable, locked onto Kara with frightening intensity. He shouldn't have been here. Roman Vescari didn't attend charity galas. He owned the people who did. "I'm sorry," Kara stammered, wiping frantically at her tears. "I didn't know anyone was in here. I'll leave." "Stay." The command was soft but absolute. Roman moved closer, his footsteps silent against the Persian rug. He stopped a few feet away, studying her with an expression Kara couldn't read. Not pity, not disgust. Something else entirely. Something that made her pulse quicken for reasons that had nothing to do with fear. "Who made you cry?" he asked. His voice carried the kind of authority that didn't expect to be questioned. Kara hesitated, her instincts screaming at her to lie, to deflect, to protect Damon even now because that's what she'd been trained to do for 3 years. But something about the way Roman looked at her, like she was a puzzle worth solving instead of a problem worth fixing, made the truth spill out. "My ex-fiancé," she whispered. "He's here tonight. He told me I'm too. That I shouldn't have worn this dress. That I embarrass people." The temperature in the library dropped. Roman's expression shifted into something lethal. "He insulted you?" The question came out soft, dangerous, like the moment before a gun fires. Kara nodded, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks despite her best efforts to stop them. Roman stepped closer until he stood directly in front of her, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his gaze. His rough thumb brushed away a tear trailing down her jaw, and the unexpected gentleness of the gesture made Kara's breath hitch. "What did he say exactly?" Roman asked. "He called me fat," Kara admitted, the words tasting like poison on her tongue. "He said I'm too big for rooms like this." The silence that followed was absolute. Roman's jaw tightened, a muscle jumping beneath his skin. His black eyes went cold, not with indifference, but with the kind of fury that doesn't need to be loud to be terrifying. "Your ex," Roman said slowly, "is about to learn what happens to men who disrespect a queen." Before Kara could process the words, Roman extended his hand toward her. "Come with me." "I don't understand." "You will." Roman's hand remained outstretched, steady and certain. Kara stared at it, her mind racing. She didn't know this man. Roman Vescari was a criminal, a killer. The kind of person her mother had warned her about in bedtime stories, meant to terrify children into obedience. But when she looked into his eyes, she didn't see a monster. She saw recognition, like he'd looked at her tears and seen something worth defending instead of something worth dismissing. Kara placed her trembling hand in his. Roman's fingers closed around hers. Warm, strong, absolute. "What's your name?" he asked. "Kara. Kara Vale." "Kara," Roman repeated, the name sounding different in his rough voice. "Tonight, you're going to walk back into that ballroom on my arm, and your ex is going to realize he made the worst mistake of his pathetic life." "I don't want to go back there." "You're not going back as the woman he tried to break," Roman said. "You're going back as mine." The possessive word should have frightened her. Instead, something dark and powerful unfurled in Kara's chest. Roman guided her out of the library and through the mansion's corridors with the confidence of a man who'd never been told no in his life. Kara's hand remained locked in his, her heart hammering so loudly she was certain he could hear it. When they reached the grand entrance to the ballroom, Roman paused. "One more thing," he said, turning to face her fully. He reached up and gently fixed a strand of her dark hair that had come loose during her crying, tucking it behind her ear with surprising tenderness. "You are not too much, Bella," Roman murmured, his black eyes burning into hers. "You are exactly enough to bring men like me to our knees. Remember that." Then he escorted her back into the gala like a king reclaiming stolen treasure. The effect was immediate. Conversations died mid-sentence. Champagne glasses froze halfway to painted lips. The orchestra continued playing, but the music seemed to fade beneath the weight of the ballroom's collective shock. The crowd physically parted for them. Kara felt every eye in the room lock onto her, but this time the stares weren't mocking. They were terrified. Because Roman Viscari never touched anything he didn't own. And tonight, he walked through Chicago society with Kara beside him, like a declaration of war. She spotted Maya near the dessert table, her best friend's jaw dropping open in disbelief. Maya mouthed something that looked like, "What the hell?" but Kara barely registered it, because across the ballroom, Damon had noticed. The color drained from his face as Roman guided Kara directly toward him near the grand piano. Damon stood surrounded by his wealth management colleagues, men in expensive suits who spent their days moving money for people who preferred to keep their fortunes invisible. Damon tried to smile as they approached, but fear shattered the expression before it fully formed. Roman stopped directly in front of him. The air between them crackled with violence held on a leash. "I found this woman crying alone in the dark tonight," Roman said, his voice smooth and deadly calm. "She told me a weak little coward insulted her body." Damon's colleagues immediately stepped back, their survival instincts recognizing danger faster than their egos. "Mr. Viscari," Damon stammered, his confident mask crumbling. "I didn't realize. We were just talking." "You humiliated a goddess because you were too blind to deserve her," Roman murmured, his tone never rising above conversational. "Now you'll learn consequences." Damon's pale blue eyes darted between Roman and Kara, panic blooming across his features. "It was a misunderstanding," Damon tried desperately. "Kara and I have history. Sometimes couples say things they don't mean." "You're not a couple," Roman interrupted softly. "You're a mistake she corrected 6 months ago. But apparently you're too stupid to accept it." The ballroom had gone completely silent. Everyone was watching now. Damon's face flushed red, humiliation and rage warring beneath his skin. For a split second, Kara saw the monster she'd lived with for 3 years, the man who'd punished her with silence and cruelty whenever she dared to displease him. "You don't know anything about us," Damon hissed, his voice low and venomous. "Kara's always been overly sensitive. She twists things. I was trying to help her." Roman's hand moved so fast Kara barely saw it. One moment Damon was standing, the next Roman had him by the throat, lifted slightly onto his toes, pressed against the grand piano hard enough to make the keys shudder in protest. No one moved. No one breathed. Roman leaned in close, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried through the silent ballroom. "If you ever speak her name again," Roman said quietly, "I will personally ensure that every offshore account you've hidden from the IRS disappears overnight. Your clients, the ones who prefer their money laundered through your firm, will discover exactly how careless you've been with their fortunes. And the Irish syndicate backing your wealth management operation will learn that you've been skimming from their investments for years." Damon's eyes went wide with terror. "How did you—" "I know everything about everyone in this room," Roman continued. "That's how I stay alive. And now I know you're not just cruel, you're stupid, because you looked at a woman like Kara and tried to make her small so you could feel big." Roman released him abruptly. Damon collapsed against the piano, gasping. "You have until sunrise to leave Chicago," Roman said, straightening his suit calmly. "If you're still in the city when I wake up, you won't live to see another morning." The crowd remained frozen in place as Roman turned back to Kara, his expression softening instantly. He offered her his arm again, and she took it without hesitation. They walked out of the Heritage Crown Gala together, while Chicago's elite watched in stunned silence. Kara's entire body was shaking by the time they reached the valet stand outside. The night air felt sharp against her overheated skin, and her mind couldn't quite process what had just happened. Roman had defended her, not with empty words or performative gestures, with real, terrifying power. "I didn't ask you to do that," she whispered. "I know. You threatened to ruin his life." "I will ruin his life," Roman corrected calmly. "The threat was courtesy. The action begins at dawn." Kara stared at him, trying to reconcile the brutal man who just choked her ex-fiancé against a piano with the one who gently wiped her tears in the library. "Why?" she asked. "You don't know me." Roman turned to face her fully, his black eyes reflecting the city lights. "I know enough," he said. "I know you walked into that ballroom tonight wearing insecurity like armor because some worthless man spent years teaching you to hate yourself. I know you cried alone in the dark instead of asking for help because you've learned that vulnerability gets punished. And I know that when I touched your face, you flinched, Not because you were afraid of me, but because you expected cruelty. His words landed like physical blows, because they were true. All of them. Men like your ex destroy beautiful things because they're too weak to protect them, Roman continued. But I am not weak, Bella, and now that I've found you, I will make certain no one ever makes you cry again. The possessiveness in his voice should have frightened her. Instead, Kara felt something dark and powerful unfurl inside her chest. Something that whispered maybe being claimed by a dangerous man was safer than being broken by a weak one. Roman's driver pulled up in a sleek black Mercedes that probably cost more than Kara's annual salary. Roman opened the door for her himself. "Let me take you home," he said. It wasn't really a question. Kara hesitated for only a moment before sliding into the luxury vehicle. Roman settled beside her, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. The car pulled smoothly into Chicago's nighttime traffic, and silence stretched between them. Not uncomfortable, but charged with something Kara couldn't name. "What happens now?" she finally asked. Roman glanced at her, his expression unreadable in the passing streetlights. "Now?" he repeated. "Now your ex learns that insulting you was the last mistake he'll ever make as a free man. You were serious about that." "I'm always serious, Bella." The Mercedes glided through downtown Chicago, past skyscrapers that scraped the clouds and streets that hummed with weekend nightlife. Kara watched the city blur past her window, her mind racing. She should be afraid. Roman Viscari was a criminal, a killer, a man who'd just threatened to destroy another human being's entire existence without a second thought. But when she replayed the moment he'd found her crying in the library, all she could remember was the way he'd looked at her. Like she mattered, like her pain was unacceptable, like she deserved to be defended instead of diminished. The car pulled up outside Kara's modest apartment building in Lincoln Park. It wasn't fancy. Just a two-bedroom walk-up she shared with Maya. But it was hers. Roman stepped out first and offered his hand to help her from the vehicle. His touch was warm, steady, absolute. "Thank you," Kara said softly. "For tonight. For everything." Roman's thumb traced a gentle circle against her palm before releasing her hand. "This isn't over, Kara," he said. "I meant what I said in that ballroom. You're mine now, and I protect what's mine." The declaration should have sounded insane. They'd known each other for less than an hour, but something in Roman's black eyes told Kara he wasn't speaking metaphorically. He meant every word. "I don't understand what this is," she admitted. "You will," Roman promised. "Soon." He waited until she was safely inside the building before returning to the Mercedes. Kara climbed the 3 flights to her apartment in a daze, her mind replaying the entire surreal evening. When she finally unlocked her door and stepped inside, Maya was waiting on the couch with a bottle of wine and an expression of absolute shock. "What the hell just happened?" Maya exploded the moment Kara closed the door. "Roman Viscari? Roman Viscari walked you out of that gala like you were the only person in the room. Do you have any idea who that man is?" "I know who he is," Kara said quietly, dropping her purse on the entryway table. "He's literally the Mafia, Kara, like actual organized crime. People disappear when they cross him." "I know." Maya stared at her best friend like she'd grown a second head. "Then explain to me why you just got into his car and let him drive you home." Kara sank onto the couch beside Maya, exhaustion crashing over her like a wave. "Damon cornered me tonight," she said. "He called me fat, told me I embarrass people just by existing, and then Roman found me crying in the library." Maya's expression immediately softened. "Oh, honey." "He asked who made me cry," Kara continued. "And when I told him, Maya, I've never seen anyone look that angry before. Not violent angry, protective angry, like my tears personally offended him. So he threatened Damon." "He did more than threaten him," Kara said. "He told him to leave Chicago by sunrise, or he wouldn't live to see another morning." Maya's eyes went wide. "Jesus Christ!" They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the evening settling between them. "Are you okay?" Maya finally asked. Kara considered the question honestly. Was she okay? A mafia boss had claimed her in front of Chicago's elite. Her ex-fiancé was probably fleeing the city in terror. And somehow, despite the insanity of it all, Kara felt safer than she had in years. I don't know, she admitted. But for the first time since I left Damon, I don't feel small anymore. Maya squeezed her hand gently. Just promise me you'll be careful, she said. Roman Viscari isn't the kind of man you walk away from easily. Kara nodded, but deep down she suspected the truth was far more complicated, because Roman Viscari wasn't the kind of man you walked away from at all. That night, Kara lay awake in bed watching the Chicago skyline glow through her window. Her phone sat silent on the nightstand. No calls, no texts, no threats from Damon, just silence. And somehow, that felt more ominous than anything. She was still awake when the sun began to rise over Lake Michigan, painting the sky in shades of amber and blood orange. Her phone finally buzzed with a news alert. Kara unlocked the screen with trembling fingers. Breaking. Federal agents raid downtown wealth management firm. Her breath caught. The article showed Damon being led out of his office building in handcuffs while news helicopters circled overhead. His face was pale, his expensive suit rumpled, his eyes wide with shock. The caption beneath the photo read, Damon Pierce, senior partner at Pierce & Associates, arrested early this morning on charges of money laundering, tax evasion, and financial fraud. Kara's hand shook as she read the full article. Federal agents had seized everything. Offshore accounts, client files, years of financial records. Damon's Irish syndicate clients had immediately cut ties, leaving him without protection or resources. His career was over. His fortune was gone. His reputation was destroyed. Roman had done exactly what he'd promised. By sunrise, Damon's entire life had collapsed. And somehow, Roman had made it look like legitimate federal action rather than criminal retaliation. Kara's phone buzzed again. Not with a news alert this time, but with a text from an unknown number. Good morning, Bella. I hope you slept well. Her heart hammered as she typed back. How did you get my number? The response came immediately. I told you. I know everything about everyone in this city, including beautiful women who deserve better than the men who tried to break them. Kara stared at the message, her pulse racing. Did you do this? The arrest? I told him to leave Chicago. He chose to stay. Actions have consequences. Before Kara could respond, another message appeared. A delivery will arrive at your door this afternoon. Wear it tonight. I'll send a car at 8. I didn't agree to anything. You will. The audacity of the message should have infuriated her. Instead, Kara found herself smiling despite everything. Roman Vescari was dangerous, possessive, and absolutely certain she belonged to him after one evening. And the terrifying part was that Kara wasn't sure he was wrong. The day passed in a blur of news coverage and frantic messages from people she hadn't spoken to in years. Everyone wanted to know about Damon's arrest. Everyone had opinions about his downfall. No one mentioned Roman. At exactly 3 o'clock, a delivery arrived. The courier handed Kara a large black velvet box embossed with gold lettering from one of Chicago's most exclusive boutiques. She signed for it with shaking hands and carried it inside. Maya appeared from her bedroom, eyes wide. Please tell me that's not what I think it is. Kara set the box on the dining table and carefully lifted the lid. Inside was a custom ruby gown designed to worship every inch of her body instead of hiding it. The fabric felt like liquid silk beneath her fingers, deep crimson velvet that seemed to glow in the afternoon light. A handwritten card rested against the silk folds. A queen should never dress to disappear. Wear red tonight. Roman. Oh my God, Maya whispered. He sent you a dress. Apparently. Kara, this is insane. You can't actually go. I know. But even as Kara said the words, she was already imagining what it would feel like to wear that gown. To step out of the shadows Damon had forced her into, to stop apologizing for taking up space, to be claimed by a man who looked at her like she hung the moon. This is a terrible idea, Maya said. Probably. He's literally a criminal. I know. You've known him for less than 24 hours. I know that too. Maya stared at her best friend with a mixture of concern and resignation. You're going anyway, aren't you? Kara looked down at the crimson gown and felt something shift inside her chest. Yes, she said quietly. I think I am. Because for the first time in years, someone had looked at her and seen a queen instead of a burden, and Kara wanted to know what it felt like to believe him. At exactly 8 o'clock that evening, the black Mercedes pulled up outside her building. Kara descended the stairs wearing the ruby gown, her dark hair swept up in an elegant twist, her heart hammering against her ribs. The driver opened the door without a word. She slid into the leather interior, and the car pulled smoothly into Chicago's nighttime traffic. They drove north through the city, past the tourist districts and shopping corridors, until the Mercedes turned onto Lakeshore Drive. The skyline glittered beside them, like scattered diamonds against black velvet. Finally, the car pulled up to the Drake Hotel, one of Chicago's most historic and exclusive establishments. The driver opened her door, and Kara stepped out into the cool night air. A doorman immediately guided her through the lobby and into a private elevator that required a key card to operate. The doors closed silently, and the elevator began rising. When it finally stopped, the doors opened directly into a penthouse dining suite. And there, standing beside floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the glittering Chicago skyline, was Roman Viscari. He turned as she entered, and the expression that crossed his face made Kara's breath catch. He looked at her the way starving men looked at salvation. "Bella," he murmured, crossing the room in 3 powerful strides. "You're devastating." Roman reached for her hand, pressing a kiss against her knuckles that felt more intimate than it should have. "Come," he said. "Dinner is waiting." The penthouse suite was breathtaking. A single table sat beside the windows, set with crystal and candlelight and dishes that smelled like heaven. Soft instrumental music played from hidden speakers. It was the most romantic setting Kara had ever experienced. And somehow, that made it more terrifying. Because Roman Viscari wasn't courting her. He was claiming her. They sat across from each other while unseen staff served course after course of culinary perfection. But Kara barely tasted the food. She was too focused on the man watching her with predatory intensity. "Tell me about yourself," Roman said after the first course was cleared. "What do you want to know?" "Everything." So Kara talked. About growing up in a small town downstate. About moving to Chicago for college and never leaving. About her job as a graphic designer at a mid-sized marketing firm. About her love of old movies and her secret addiction to reality television. Roman listened with a focus that made the rest of the world vanish. He asked about her childhood dreams, her favorite books, the songs she secretly played while driving alone at night. He seemed genuinely interested in every mundane detail of her ordinary life. And for the first time in years, Kara felt truly seen, not judged, not tolerated, worshipped. "Now you," she said finally. "Tell me about yourself." Roman's expression shifted slightly. "What do you want to know?" "Everything," Kara echoed his earlier word. Roman smiled. "Dark, dangerous, devastating." "I was born in Sicily," he began. "My family controlled the southern territories for generations. When I was 16, my father was killed by a rival family. They tried to kill me too, but I survived." His voice remained calm, conversational, as if discussing the weather. "I came to Chicago 10 years ago with nothing but rage and ambition. I built an empire from blood and loyalty. Now I own this city. Not the politicians or the police. Me. And you're telling me this because you deserve to know exactly who I am before this goes any further," Roman said. "I'm not a good man, Kara. I've killed people who crossed me. I've destroyed lives. I will never apologize for the things I've done to protect what's mine." He leaned forward, his black eyes burning into hers. "But I will also never lie to you, never diminish you, never make you feel small so I can feel powerful. You asked me for honesty? Here it is. I saw you crying in that library last night, and something inside me recognized you as mine. I don't expect you to understand it. I barely understand it myself, but I meant what I said. You belong to me now, and I protect what's mine with blood." The declaration should have frightened her. Instead, Kara felt heat bloom low in her stomach. "That's insane," she whispered. "Yes, we just met." "I know. This isn't how normal relationships work." Roman's smile turned predatory. "Nothing about me is normal, Bella, but I will worship you in ways normal men never could." Before Kara could respond, the penthouse doors exploded open. 2 massive bodyguards dragged someone into the dining suite, someone whose face was bruised, whose expensive suit was torn and bloodstained. Damon. He looked like a corpse not yet buried. Kara's heart stopped as the bodyguards threw her ex-fiancé to the floor at Roman's feet. Damon scrambled backward, panic radiating from him in waves. until his back hit the wall. "What is this?" Chiara breathed. Roman stood slowly, his expression shifting into something lethal. "This," he said calmly, "is what happens when weak men refuse to learn consequences." Damon sobbed, falling to his knees. "Please," he begged, his voice raw with terror. "Please, I'm sorry. I'll leave. I swear I'll leave Chicago tonight. Just call them off." "Call who off?" Roman asked softly. "The O'Malley Syndicate," Damon gasped. "They're hunting me. They say I stole from them, but I can explain." "You did steal from them," Roman interrupted. "I made certain they discovered every fraudulent transaction you've ever made, including the $2 million you skimmed from their accounts over the past 18 months. Damon's face went white. Roman crouched down until he was eye level with the broken man cowering against the wall. "You had one chance to leave this city quietly," Roman said, "but you stayed. You thought hiding in your office would protect you. You thought the federal arrest would be the worst thing that happened to you today." He smiled. Cold, cruel, absolute. "You were wrong." Damon turned desperate eyes to Kara. "Please," he sobbed. "Tell him to stop. I'm sorry for what I said. I'm sorry for everything. Just tell him to call off the Irish." "You do not speak to her," Roman growled, his voice dropping to something inhuman. The bodyguards grabbed Damon again, hauling him roughly to his feet. "Take him downstairs," Roman ordered coldly. "The O'Malley brothers are waiting in the alley." "No!" Damon screamed as he was dragged toward the elevator. "No, please!" The doors closed on his terrified shrieks. Silence swallowed the penthouse. Kara stood frozen beside the table, her mind struggling to process what she'd just witnessed. Roman turned to face her, and for the first time that evening, uncertainty flickered across his brutal features. "Tell me the truth," he said quietly. "Are you frightened of me now?" Kara looked into his eyes and saw the storm beneath the calm surface. Violence, obsession, possession. But beneath all of it, devotion. Roman Viscari would burn cities for her smile. And for the first time in years, someone wanted her to take up space instead of apologizing for existing. Kara stepped forward until her palms rested against his chest, feeling his heart thunder beneath her touch. "No," she whispered. "I'm not afraid of you." Something dangerous flashed in Roman's eyes. "You should be." "I know." Roman exhaled sharply like a man barely surviving his own restraint. Then he kissed her. Not gently, not cautiously. Like a starving king finally claiming the only thing powerful enough to bring him to his knees. The kiss tasted like danger and inevitability. Roman's mouth claimed hers with bruising intensity, one hand fisting in her hair while the other wrapped around her waist, crushing her against his body. Kara's breath caught as her palms flattened against his chest, feeling the violent thunder of his heartbeat beneath expensive fabric. This wasn't a first kiss. This was a conquest. Roman kissed her like a man who'd been starving for years and had finally found sustenance. His teeth grazed her bottom lip hard enough to make her gasp, and he swallowed the sound like it belonged to him. When he finally pulled back, Kara's legs were shaking. Roman's black eyes burned into hers, his breathing ragged. "You should run," he said roughly. "Right now, before this goes somewhere you can't come back from." Kara's fingers curled into his suit jacket. "What if I don't want to come back?" Something feral flashed across Roman's face. He kissed her again, harder this time, walking her backward until her spine hit the floor-to-ceiling window. The cold glass pressed against her bare shoulders while Roman's heat consumed her from the front. His hands roamed her body with possessive certainty, mapping curves, claiming territory, erasing every insecurity Damon had ever planted in her mind. Chicago glittered below them like a kingdom waiting to be conquered. When Roman finally released her, Kara's lipstick was smeared and her carefully styled hair had come loose. She looked thoroughly ravaged. Roman looked satisfied. "I'm taking you home," he said, his voice rough. "Before I forget, I'm trying to be civilized." "What if I don't want civilized?" Roman's jaw tightened, a muscle jumping beneath his skin. "Kara!" "You claimed me in front of the entire city last night," she interrupted, her voice steadier than she felt. "You destroyed my ex-fiancé's life before sunrise. You just had him dragged away by Irish mobsters, and now you're pretending you care about being appropriate?" Roman stared at her like she'd just struck him. "I'm trying to give you a choice," he said quietly. "Because once this goes further, there is no walking away. You understand? I don't do casual. I don't do temporary. If you stay tonight, you're mine, completely, permanently, no exceptions. The declaration should have sent her running. Instead, Kara felt something dark and powerful unfurl inside her chest. Maybe I'm tired of men who give me choices and then punish me for making the wrong ones, she said. Maybe I want someone who's honest about what he wants instead of pretending to be something he's not. Roman's expression shifted into something dangerous and hungry. You don't know what you're asking for. Then show me. The words hung between them like a lit match near gasoline. Roman moved so fast Kara barely registered the motion. One moment she was pressed against the window. The next, she was in his arms, her legs wrapping instinctively around his waist as he carried her away from the dining table toward the penthouse's private quarters. The bedroom was all dark wood and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Michigan. Roman set her down beside the massive bed, his hands immediately finding the zipper of her crimson gown. Last chance, he murmured against her throat. Walk away now, and I'll let you go. Stay, and you're mine until I decide otherwise. Kara's breath came in shallow gasps as Roman's rough hand slid the gown off her shoulders. I'm staying. Roman's control shattered. Hours later, Kara lay tangled in silk sheets while Chicago's city lights painted patterns across Roman's bedroom ceiling. Her body ached in ways that felt both foreign and addictive. Roman's arm was wrapped around her waist, his large hand splayed possessively across her stomach. She should feel terrified. She should be questioning every decision that had led to this moment. Instead, she felt powerful, because for the first time in her life, a man had looked at her body and worshipped every inch instead of cataloging flaws. Roman's rough voice broke the silence. What are you thinking? Kara turned in his arms until she could see his face in the ambient light. That this is insane. It is. That I barely know you. You know enough. That you're a criminal who just sentenced my ex-fiancée to death. Roman's expression didn't change. He's not dead yet, he said calmly. The O'Malleys will make him suffer first. They're very particular about thieves. The casual brutality of the statement should have horrified her. Should I feel guilty? Kara asked quietly. Do you? She considered the question honestly. Did she feel guilty that Damon was currently being hunted through Chicago's underworld like prey? That his entire life had imploded because he'd called her fat at a charity gala? No, she admitted. Is that wrong? Roman's thumb traced lazy circles against her hip. He spent 3 years destroying you, he said, piece by piece, day by day, making you hate yourself so completely that you forgot what it felt like to take up space without apologizing. So no, Bella, you shouldn't feel guilty. You should feel satisfied. Kara studied his face in the darkness. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? A monster. Roman smiled. Dark, dangerous, devastating. I am a monster, he said. Just not to you. Before Kara could respond, Roman's phone buzzed on the nightstand. He reached for it with his free hand, his expression hardening as he read the screen. What is it? Kara asked. Business, Roman said shortly, already sliding out of bed. He crossed the room naked and utterly unselfconscious, retrieving his clothes from where they'd been discarded hours earlier. Kara watched him dress with efficient precision. The man who'd just made love to her with consuming intensity, replaced by the Mafia boss who ruled Chicago's underworld. I need to handle something, Roman said, buttoning his shirt. Stay here. My driver will take you home in the morning. What kind of business? Roman's black eyes met hers, the kind you don't want to know about. He crossed back to the bed, pressing a hard kiss against her mouth. Sleep, he ordered. You're safe here. Then he was gone. Kara lay alone in Roman's massive bed, surrounded by his scent and the lingering heat of his body, and tried to process the fact that she'd just slept with Chicago's most dangerous criminal, and she wanted to do it again. Morning arrived in shades of gray and gold. Kara woke to find a fresh set of clothes laid out on the chair beside Roman's bed. Designer jeans, a soft cashmere sweater, and undergarments that fit her perfectly, despite the fact that she'd never told anyone her sizes. A handwritten note rested on top of the folded clothing. Had an early meeting. Wear these home. I'll send for you tonight. R. The presumption should have annoyed her. Instead, Kara found herself smiling as she dressed in the expensive clothes that somehow fit like they'd been made for her body specifically. Roman's driver was waiting downstairs when she emerged from the penthouse. He opened the Mercedes door without a word, and they drove through Chicago's Monday morning traffic in silence. When they finally pulled up outside her apartment building, Kara expected the driver to simply let her out. Instead, he handed her a black credit card. "Mr. Viscari instructed me to give you this," he said in heavily accented English. "No limit. Use it for whatever you need." Kara stared at the card like it might bite her. "I can't accept this." "You can," the driver interrupted calmly. "And you will. Mr. Viscari does not appreciate his generosity being refused." There was no threat in his voice, just certainty. Kara took the card with trembling fingers and climbed out of the Mercedes. Maya was waiting inside their apartment with coffee and an expression of barely contained panic. "You didn't come home last night," she said the moment Kara closed the door. "I called you 17 times. Where were you?" Kara set her purse on the entryway table, avoiding her best friend's eyes. "I was with Roman." Maya's coffee mug froze halfway to her lips. "Define with." "Do I really need to?" "Oh my God," Maya breathed. "You slept with him. You slept with Roman Viscari." Kara sank onto the couch, exhaustion crashing over her like a wave. "It's more complicated than that." "How is it more complicated?" Maya exploded. "Kara, he's literally the Mafia. He kills people. And now you're, what, dating him? Fucking him? Being kept by him?" The words hit harder than Maya probably intended. "I don't know what this is," Kara admitted quietly, "but it feels right. In a way nothing else ever has." Maya stared at her best friend like she'd grown a second head. "You've known him for 48 hours. "I know. He destroyed Damon's entire life. Damon deserved it." "Maybe," Maya conceded, "but that doesn't change the fact that Roman Viscari is dangerous and obsessive and clearly incapable of healthy boundaries." Kara looked down at the black credit card still clutched in her hand. "He gave me this," she said. "Unlimited credit. Told me to use it for whatever I need." Maya's eyes widened. "Jesus Christ, Kara. He's treating you like property, or like someone worth taking care of." "There's a difference between taking care of someone and owning them," Maya said carefully. "And from where I'm sitting, Roman definitely thinks he owns you." The words should have frightened Kara. Instead, she remembered the way Roman had looked at her last night, the way he'd touched her, the way he'd made her feel powerful instead of small. "Maybe I want to be owned by someone who actually values me," Kara said quietly. Maya opened her mouth to respond, then closed it again. Because what could she say? That Kara was making a mistake? That falling for a mafia boss would end in tragedy? That normal, healthy men didn't claim women they'd just met with such absolute certainty? All of it was probably true. But Maya had also watched her best friend spend 3 years being slowly destroyed by a man who'd pretended to be safe and normal and appropriate. Maybe dangerous honesty was better than civilized cruelty. "Just promise me you'll be careful," Maya finally said. Kara nodded, but deep down she suspected it was already too late for careful. The week that followed passed in a blur of surreal normalcy punctuated by moments of absolute insanity. Kara went to work at her graphic design job like nothing had changed. She attended meetings, revised client proposals, ate lunch at her desk while scrolling through news coverage of Damon's spectacular downfall. But every evening at exactly 7 o'clock, the black Mercedes arrived to take her to Roman. Sometimes they had dinner at expensive restaurants where the staff treated Roman like visiting royalty, and everyone else like potential threats. Sometimes they stayed in his penthouse while Roman conducted business over the phone in rapid Italian that Kara didn't understand but found devastatingly attractive anyway. And every night, Roman took her to bed like a man possessed. He learned her body with frightening precision, discovered every sensitive spot, every secret preference, every sound she made when pleasure overwhelmed conscious thought. He was demanding and possessive and utterly focused on her satisfaction in ways that felt almost dangerous. Because the more time Kara spent with Roman, the harder it became to imagine life without him. Which was exactly the problem. On Thursday evening, Kara stood in Roman's penthouse bathroom wearing nothing but his dress shirt while he conducted a business call in the adjacent bedroom. She studied her reflection in the massive mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. Her hair was tousled from Roman's hands. Her lips were swollen from his kisses. Dark marks bloomed across her throat and collarbone. Territorial claims Roman had left with his teeth and hadn't apologized for. She looked thoroughly owned, and the terrifying part was that she liked it. A sharp knock on the bathroom door made her jump. "Bella," Roman called. "I need to leave for a few hours, business emergency." Kara wrapped a towel around herself and opened the door. Roman stood in the bedroom fully dressed in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent. Two bodyguards waited by the elevator doors, their expressions blank and professional. "What kind of emergency?" Kara asked. Roman's jaw tightened. "The kind I can't discuss." "Because it's illegal." "Because it's dangerous," he corrected. "And I don't bring danger near you unless absolutely necessary." He crossed the room and pulled her against his chest, his large hand cradling the back of her head. "Stay here tonight," he murmured against her hair. "I'll be back before sunrise." "And if you're not?" Roman pulled back just enough to look into her eyes. "Then Luca will take you home safely," he said, gesturing toward one of the bodyguards. "But I will always come back to you, Kara. Always." The promise settled over her like a weighted blanket. Roman kissed her once, hard and possessive, then left with his guards. The penthouse felt enormous and empty without him. Kara wandered through the sprawling space, touching expensive furniture and staring at original artwork that probably cost more than her entire apartment building. She found Roman's home office and hesitated in the doorway. She shouldn't snoop. But curiosity won. The office was masculinely elegant: dark wood, leather furniture, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves filled with volumes in multiple languages. Roman's desk sat before another wall of windows overlooking Lake Michigan. Kara approached slowly, her bare feet silent against the hardwood floors. The desk was surprisingly clean, no scattered papers or abandoned coffee cups. Just a closed laptop, a single file folder, and a framed photograph turned face down. Kara's fingers trembled as she reached for the photograph. It showed a much younger Roman, maybe 16 or 17, standing beside a beautiful woman with kind eyes and dark hair. His arm was around her shoulders, and he was actually smiling. Not the dangerous, predatory expression Kara was used to, but genuine happiness. Before she could study it further, her phone buzzed in the pocket of Roman's shirt. Maya's name flashed across the screen. Kara answered immediately. "Hey, what's up?" "Where are you?" Maya's voice was tight with tension. "Roman's place." "Why?" "You need to come home. Now." Kara's heart rate spiked. "What happened?" "Just come home," Maya repeated. "Please, Kara. It's important." The line went dead. Kara stared at her phone, dread coiling in her stomach. She quickly dressed in the clothes she'd worn earlier and took the private elevator down to the parking garage where Roman's drivers waited. Luca looked up as she approached. "Miss Vale? Is everything all right?" "I need to go home," Kara said. "Now." Luca's expression remained professionally neutral, but Kara saw the calculation behind his eyes. Roman had told him to keep her safe. Taking her somewhere without approval might violate that order. Mr. Vescari instructed— "I don't care what he instructed," Kara interrupted. "My roommate needs me. Either drive me home or I'm calling an Uber." Luca hesitated for only a moment before nodding. "Get in." The drive to Lincoln Park felt interminable. Chicago's Thursday night traffic crawled, and every red light made Kara's anxiety spike higher. She tried calling Maya back 3 times, but her best friend didn't answer. When they finally pulled up outside her apartment building, Kara barely waited for the car to stop before jumping out. She took the stairs 2 at a time, her breath coming in sharp gasps by the time she reached the 3rd floor. The apartment door was unlocked. Kara's blood went cold. She pushed it open slowly. "Maya?" No response. Kara stepped inside, her heart hammering. The living room looked normal, nothing overturned or broken, no signs of struggle, but Maya's purse sat on the coffee table beside her phone, and Maya never went anywhere without her phone. "Maya!" Kara called again, louder this time. A sound came from the kitchen. Kara moved toward it on instinct, rounding the corner, and froze. Maya sat at their small kitchen table, but she wasn't alone. A man Kara didn't recognize sat across from her. He was probably in his early 40s, with graying hair and cold blue eyes. His expensive suit suggested money, but the way he carried himself suggested violence. Two more men stood behind Maya, their hands resting casually on her shoulders. Maya's face was pale, her eyes wide with terror. "Caravale," the seated man said pleasantly. "So nice of you to join us." Carr's throat closed. "Who are you?" "My name is Connor O'Malley," he said, "and I believe you're acquainted with a business associate of mine, Roman Vescari." The name hit Cara like a physical blow. O'Malley. The Irish syndicate Roman had sent Damon to as punishment. "I don't understand." "Let me clarify," Connor interrupted smoothly. "Roman Vescari has been systematically dismantling my family's operations for the past 6 months, stealing territories, turning our allies, cutting off supply lines, and 3 days ago he sent us a thief to torture as some kind of territorial pissing match." His cold eyes locked onto Cara. "But here's what's interesting," Connor continued. "Roman doesn't usually get personal. He's a businessman first, a killer second. Emotions make you sloppy in our world. Yet suddenly he's parading around Chicago with a woman on his arm, defending her honor, destroying her enemies, acting completely uncharacteristic." Connor leaned forward slightly. "So I asked myself, who is this woman that made Chicago's most ruthless sovereign forget himself? And more importantly, what would happen if someone took her away?" Kara's pulse thundered in her ears. "If you hurt her—" "Oh, I'm not going to hurt your friend," Connor said. "Not unless you force me to. See, you're going to do something for me, Miss Vale. Something that will send Roman a very clear message about overstepping boundaries." "I won't—" "You will," Connor interrupted calmly. "Because if you don't, your best friend Maya here will disappear into the kind of hole people don't climb out of. And before she dies, she'll spend days begging for mercy that will never come." Maya let out a choked sob. Rage flooded through Kiara, hot and consuming. "What do you want?" Connor smiled. "There's a warehouse on the south side," he said. "Industrial district near the river. Roman keeps certain sensitive materials there. Financial records, blackmail files. Evidence that could bury half the city's elite if it ever saw daylight." He slid a small flash drive across the kitchen table. "You're going to walk into that warehouse tomorrow night," Connor continued. "Upload the contents of this drive to Roman's server, and walk out without anyone knowing you were there." "You want me to hack his files," Cara said flatly. "I want you to plant a virus that will give me access to everything Roman spent a decade protecting," Connor corrected. "And you're going to do it, because you love your friend, and because Roman trusts you enough to let you get close." Kara's mind raced. If she did this, she'd betray Roman completely, destroy the trust he'd built, hand his enemies everything they needed to dismantle his empire. But if she didn't, Maya would die screaming. "How do I even get into the warehouse?" Cara asked, her voice hollow. Connor's smile widened. "Roman gave you an unlimited credit card 3 days ago. Access to his penthouse, his private driver. You think he hasn't also given you security clearance to his properties? The man is obsessed with you, Miss Vale. Use it." He stood, his men releasing Maya's shoulders. "You have until tomorrow night at midnight," Connor said. "Upload the virus, walk away, and your friend lives. Refuse, and I'll mail her to Roman in pieces small enough to fit in a jewelry box." The men filed out of the apartment like ghosts. The moment the door closed, Maya collapsed forward, sobbing. Kara rushed to her side, wrapping her arms around her best friend while her own mind spun in circles. "I'm sorry," Maya gasped. "I'm so sorry. They just showed up and I didn't know what to do." "It's not your fault," Cara said numbly. But inside she was screaming. Because Connor O'Malley was right about one thing. Roman trusted her. And now she had to decide whether Maya's life was worth betraying the most dangerous man in Chicago. Cara didn't sleep that night. She lay in her bed staring at the ceiling while Maya finally passed out from exhaustion in the next room. The flash drive sat on Kara's nightstand like a live grenade. Her phone buzzed around 3 in the morning. Roman's name flashed across the screen. Kara's hand shook as she answered. "Bella." Roman's rough voice filled her ear. "Why did you leave the penthouse?" "Maya needed me," Cara said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Luca told me. Is everything all right?" No, nothing was all right. Irish mobsters had invaded her home and threatened to torture her best friend unless Cara destroyed the man currently asking if she was okay. "Just roommate drama," Cara lied. "Nothing serious." Silence stretched across the line. "You're lying to me," Roman said quietly. Kara's breath caught. "What?" "Your voice changes when you lie," Roman continued. "Your breathing gets shallow. You speak faster. So I'll ask again, Bella. What happened tonight?" Kara closed her eyes, tears burning behind her eyelids. She could tell him, right now. Confess everything and let Roman handle it with the brutal efficiency he was famous for. But Connor's words echoed in her mind. Your friend will disappear into the kind of hole people don't climb out of. If she told Roman, he'd go to war with the O'Malleys, and Maya would be the first casualty. "I'm fine," Kara said. "Really, just tired." Another long silence. "I'm coming to get you," Roman finally said. "No, that wasn't a request." The line went dead. Panic flooded through Kara. If Roman showed up now, he'd sense something was wrong. He'd push until she broke, and then Maya would die. She had exactly 20 minutes before Roman's Mercedes arrived. Kara grabbed the flash drive and shoved it deep into her purse. Then she scribbled a quick note for Maya and slipped out of the apartment before her best friend could wake up and ask questions. She made it to the street just as the black Mercedes pulled up. Roman stepped out of the back seat himself instead of waiting for the driver. He wore the same charcoal suit from earlier, but now his tie was loosened and his expression was dark with concern. "Get in the car," he said. It wasn't a suggestion. Kara climbed into the Mercedes and Roman slid in beside her. The car pulled smoothly into Chicago's pre-dawn traffic while Roman studied her face with frightening intensity. "Tell me what's wrong," he said. "Nothing's wrong." Roman's hand shot out, gripping her chin gently but firmly, forcing her to meet his eyes. "Don't," he said softly. "Don't lie to me again, Kara. I can feel it when something's hurting you, so either tell me the truth or watch me burn this entire city down trying to find out what happened." Kara's eyes burned with unshed tears. She wanted to tell him, wanted to collapse into his protection and let him fix everything with the brutal efficiency she'd come to depend on. But Maya's terrified face flashed through her mind. "I just need you," Kara whispered. "Can that be enough right now?" Roman's expression softened slightly. He pulled her against his chest, wrapping both arms around her while Chicago blurred past the tinted windows. "It's enough," he murmured against her hair. "It's always enough." Kara closed her eyes and tried not to think about the flash drive burning a hole through her purse, or the fact that in less than 24 hours she'd have to choose between saving her best friend and destroying the only man who'd ever made her feel truly seen. Friday arrived in shades of gray and dread. Kara spent the day at Roman's penthouse trying to act normal while her mind spun in desperate circles. Roman worked from his home office, occasionally emerging to check on her with an expression that suggested he knew something was wrong, but was giving her space to confess. Every hour that passed made Kara's chest tighter. By evening, she'd made her decision. Maya's life was worth more than her relationship with Roman. It had to be. Around 8 o'clock, Roman announced he had a business dinner across town that would last several hours. "Come with me," he said, already knowing her answer. "I'm exhausted," Kara lied. "I think I'll just stay here and sleep." Roman studied her face for a long moment. "You're still lying to me," he said quietly. "I'm not. Yes, you are." Roman crossed the room until he stood directly in front of her. "And it's killing me, Bella, because I can't protect you from something you won't tell me about." Kara forced herself to meet his eyes. "Sometimes protection means letting me handle things myself," she said. Roman's jaw tightened. "Not in my world." He kissed her once, hard and possessive, then left with his bodyguards. The moment the elevator doors closed, Kara grabbed her purse and pulled out the flash drive. Her hands shook as she called the number Connor had programmed into her phone that morning. He answered on the first ring. "Miss Vale. I was beginning to worry you'd make the wrong choice." "Where's the warehouse?" Kara asked, her voice hollow. Connor rattled off an address on the south side. "The security code is 8742, he continued. "Roman's office is on the second floor. You'll find his main server in the back room. Plug in the drive. Wait for the upload to complete. Leave. And then Maya goes free. Once I confirm the virus is active, your friend will be released unharmed," Connor promised. "You have my word." The word of an Irish mobster meant nothing, but Kara was out of options. She ended the call and took Roman's private elevator down to the parking garage. Luca looked up as she approached. "Miss Vale?" Mr. Viscari said you were staying in tonight. Change of plans, Kara said, trying to sound casual. I need to pick something up from the warehouse on the south side. Luca's expression shifted slightly. The south side warehouse requires additional security clearance. Roman gave me access, Kara interrupted. Call him if you don't believe me. It was a gamble. If Luca actually called Roman, everything would collapse. But Luca simply nodded and opened the Mercedes door. Of course, Miss Vale. The drive to the industrial district felt like a funeral procession. Chicago's nighttime streets blurred past while Kara clutched the flash drive in her sweating palm. Her heart hammered so loudly she was certain Luca could hear it from the driver's seat. When they finally pulled up outside a nondescript warehouse surrounded by chain-link fencing, Kara's stomach churned with nausea. I'll only be a few minutes, she told Luca. He nodded, but his expression suggested he didn't believe her. Kara approached the warehouse's steel door and punched in the security code Connor had provided, 8742. The lock clicked open. Kara stepped inside and the door sealed shut behind her with the finality of a coffin closing. The warehouse interior was dimly lit and eerily silent. Rows of metal shelves stretched toward the ceiling, filled with unmarked boxes and sealed containers. Kara's footsteps echoed against the concrete floor as she made her way toward the metal staircase leading to the second floor. Roman's office sat at the far end of a catwalk overlooking the warehouse floor. The door was unlocked, because Roman never expected anyone to get this far. Kara pushed it open and stepped into a space that was purely functional. A desk, a computer, filing cabinets. No personal touches, no photographs, nothing that suggested this was anything more than a place Roman conducted business he didn't want traced back to his public properties. The server room was exactly where Connor said it would be. Kara pulled out the flash drive with trembling hands. This was it, the point of no return. Once she plugged in that drive, she'd betray Roman completely, destroy the trust he'd built, prove that she was exactly what men like Damon had always said, unworthy of loyalty. But Maya's terrified face flashed through her mind. Kara inserted the flash drive into the server. The screen immediately began displaying lines of code as the virus uploaded itself into Roman's system. A progress bar appeared at the bottom. 15% complete. Kara's heart hammered against her ribs. 30% complete. She wrapped her arms around herself, trying to stop shaking. 45% complete. A sound echoed from somewhere below. Kara froze. Footsteps. Heavy, deliberate. Climbing the metal staircase toward the second floor. 60% complete. The footsteps grew louder, closer. 75% complete. Kara's breath came in sharp, shallow gasps. The office door opened behind her. Hello, Bella. Roman's voice was soft, calm, absolutely lethal. Kara turned slowly, her blood turning to ice. Roman stood in the doorway, his black eyes locked on the computer screen behind her where the progress bar continued its inexorable climb toward completion. 90% complete. His expression was unreadable. Roman, Kara started. Don't, he interrupted quietly. Don't insult me by lying now. 95% complete. Roman stepped fully into the office, closing the door behind him with a soft click that sounded like a death sentence. I knew something was wrong, he continued, his voice dangerously calm. I could feel it. So I had Luca call me the moment you asked to come here. 100% complete. Upload successful. The screen went dark. Roman's eyes never left Kara's face. So now you're going to tell me exactly why you just destroyed everything I've spent 10 years building, he said softly. And it better be a very good reason, Bella, because right now the only thing keeping you alive is the fact that I'm still trying to convince myself you had no choice. Kara's throat closed. She just betrayed the most dangerous man in Chicago. And now she was about to discover exactly what happened to people who crossed Roman Viscari. The silence in Roman's office was absolute. Kara stood frozen beside the server, her hand still trembling near the USB port where the flash drive had completed its upload. The progress bar's green glow had disappeared, leaving only the reflection of her terrified face in the darkened monitor. Roman hadn't moved from his position near the door. He simply watched her with those black eyes that had once looked at her with worship and now reflected something far more dangerous. Calculation. They have Maya, Kara said, the words tumbling out in a desperate rush. Connor O'Malley and his men. They broke into my apartment last night. They threatened to torture her, to kill her. They said if I didn't upload the virus, they'd mail her to you in pieces. Roman's expression didn't change. So you chose her life over mine. No, oh, that's exactly what you did, Bella. His voice remained soft, conversational, which somehow made it more terrifying. You walked into my property, used the trust I gave you, and handed my enemies everything they need to destroy me. I didn't have a choice. Everyone has a choice, Roman interrupted. You could have told me the moment O'Malley contacted you. Instead, you lied to my face for 24 hours. You looked me in the eyes and pretended everything was fine while you planned to betray me. Kara's throat constricted. I was trying to save her by sacrificing me. Roman finally moved, crossing the small office in 3 powerful strides until he stood directly in front of her. Do you understand what you've done? That server contains financial records that could bury half of Chicago's elite. Blackmail files on judges, politicians, police captains, evidence of every crime I've committed in the past decade, and now Connor O'Malley has access to all of it. His hand shot out, gripping her jaw hard enough to make her gasp. You just gave him the keys to my kingdom, Kara, and you did it without even asking if I could protect your friend another way. Tears burned down Kara's cheeks. He said if I told you, he'd kill her immediately. And you believed him? Roman's voice finally rose, anger bleeding through his controlled exterior. You believed the word of an Irish mobster over the man who destroyed your ex-fiancée in 12 hours? The man who owns this entire city? He released her abruptly, turning away like the sight of her physically pained him. I could have saved Maya, Roman said, his back rigid with tension. I have resources O'Malley can't even imagine. Contacts, leverage, ways of making people disappear that don't involve uploading viruses into my own goddamn servers. Kara wrapped her arms around herself, her entire body shaking. I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't fix this, Roman said flatly. Sorry doesn't prevent the war. O'Malley is about to start using my own secrets as ammunition. Sorry doesn't protect the dozens of people whose lives you just endangered because you chose to trust a stranger over me. The words hit like physical blows. Because he was right. Kara had panicked, made the worst possible decision, betrayed the one person who'd actually tried to protect her. What happens now? She whispered. Roman turned back to face her, and the expression on his face made her blood run cold. Gone was the man who'd kissed her like she was oxygen, the man who'd defended her honor and worshipped her body and promised to burn cities for her smile. In his place stood Chicago's most dangerous sovereign, and Kara had just become his enemy. Now? Roman's voice dropped to something lethal. Now you're going to sit in that chair and not move while I decide whether you're worth keeping alive. Kara's legs nearly gave out. Roman pulled his phone from his pocket and made a call, speaking rapid Italian to whoever answered. The conversation was terse, brutal, punctuated by commands that needed no translation. He was mobilizing for war. When he finally ended the call, Roman's attention returned to Kara with frightening focus. Here's what's going to happen, he said. You're going to stay exactly where you are. My men are already tracking the virus's digital signature to confirm O'Malley's location. Once we have it, I'm going to retrieve your friend, and then I'm going to kill every single person involved in this disaster. And me? Kara asked, her voice barely audible. Roman's jaw tightened. I haven't decided yet. The honesty was somehow worse than a threat. Roman crossed to his desk and opened a locked drawer, pulling out a sleek black handgun. He checked the magazine with practiced efficiency, then tucked the weapon into the waistband of his suit pants. Kara watched in numb horror as the man she'd been falling for transformed into someone she didn't recognize. Roman, don't, he interrupted without looking at her. Don't say my name like we're still something we're not. You made your choice, Bella. Now you get to live with the consequences. Another knock on the office door made Kara jump. Enter, Roman called. Luca stepped inside, his professional mask firmly in place. The virus originated from a server farm in Pilsen, he reported. O'Malley's using an abandoned meatpacking plant as his base. We've confirmed at least 6 hostiles on site. And the girl? Thermal imaging shows a single heat signature in the basement, likely the hostage. Roman nodded once, his expression hardening into pure violence. Assemble the team, full tactical gear. We move in 20 minutes. Luca's eyes flicked briefly to Kara before returning to his boss. And her? Roman's black eyes locked onto Kara with an intensity that made her heart stutter. She comes with us, he said coldly. If this goes wrong, I want her to see exactly what her betrayal cost. Hamet. The abandoned meatpacking plant squatted in Pilsen's industrial wasteland like a rotting corpse. Rusted metal siding, broken windows. The kind of place Chicago forgot about decades ago and never bothered to reclaim. Perfect for the kind of business that happened in the dark. Kara sat in the back of Roman's Mercedes, flanked by two armed bodyguards who hadn't spoken a word during the 30-minute drive. Roman occupied the front passenger seat, his posture radiating controlled violence as he coordinated with the tactical team via encrypted radio. They'd assembled an actual army. 6 vehicles. 20 armed men. Military-grade equipment that made Kara's stomach churn with the reality of what she'd started. This wasn't a rescue operation. This was an execution. Roman's voice crackled through the radio, cold and precise. Team Alpha takes the north entrance. Beta covers the south. No one leaves that building alive except the hostage. Anyone who resists gets put down. No exceptions. A chorus of confirmations echoed back. Roman finally turned to look at Kara, and the emptiness in his expression made her want to disappear. When we go inside, he said, you stay behind me. You do exactly what I tell you. You don't speak unless I ask you a direct question. Understood? Kara nodded, not trusting her voice. Say it, Roman demanded. I understand. Good. He turned back to face forward. Because if you try to run, if you make a single move I don't authorize, I will put a bullet in you myself, and I won't aim to wound. The threat wasn't empty. Kara could hear it in his voice. Whatever feelings Roman had developed for her over the past week had been buried beneath the kind of fury that didn't distinguish between enemies and traitors. The vehicles stopped in a tactical formation around the meatpacking plant. Roman's men moved with military precision, spreading out to cover all exits while the main assault teams prepared to breach. Roman stepped out of the Mercedes, and Kara followed on shaking legs. The night air reeked of rust and decay. Roman checked his weapon one final time, then glanced at the 2 bodyguards flanking Kara. If she runs, shoot her in the leg, he said casually, but keep her alive. I might still have use for her. The dehumanization stung worse than any physical blow. Kara was no longer a woman Roman wanted to protect. She was a liability he hadn't decided how to dispose of yet. The tactical teams moved into position. Roman's voice came through the radio one last time. Breach in 3, 2, 1. Execute. The doors exploded inward simultaneously. Gunfire erupted immediately. Roman moved through the chaos like violence personified, his weapon rising and falling with brutal efficiency. Kara stumbled after him, her bodyguards practically dragging her through corridors that stank of blood and old meat. The firefight lasted less than 3 minutes. When the shooting finally stopped, Roman's men had secured the entire building. 6 bodies littered the ground floor. O'Malley's men executed with the kind of precision that came from years of practice. But Connor O'Malley himself was nowhere to be found. Roman's expression darkened as he surveyed the carnage. Find the hostage, he ordered. Now. The team moved toward the basement stairs, and Kara's heart hammered as they descended into darkness punctuated only by their tactical flashlights. The basement was exactly what Kara had feared. Concrete walls, exposed pipes, a single chair bolted to the floor in the center of the room. Maya sat in that chair, her wrists zip-tied to the armrests, her face bruised and tear-stained, but alive. Maya! Kara tried to rush forward, but her bodyguards held her back. Roman crossed the basement floor and crouched in front of Maya, studying her with clinical detachment. Are you hurt? He asked. Maya's terrified eyes darted between Roman and Kara. I don't understand what's happening. Answer the question, Roman interrupted calmly. They hit me, threatened me, but they didn't. Maya's voice broke. They didn't do anything else. Roman nodded once, then pulled a knife from his belt and cut through the zip ties with a single efficient motion. Maya collapsed forward, and this time when Kara moved, the bodyguards let her go. Kara caught her best friend, both of them sobbing as they clung to each other in the middle of that horrifying basement. I'm sorry, Kara gasped. I'm so sorry. It's not your fault, Maya whispered back. But it was. All of it was Kara's fault. Roman stood watching them with an expression that might have been pity if he were capable of such weakness. "Get them out of here," he told Luca. "Take the girl home. Put protection on her apartment. No one gets near her without my explicit authorization." "And Kara?" Luca asked carefully. Roman's black eyes locked onto her. "She comes back to the penthouse with me. We're not finished." The words carried the weight of a death sentence. Sad. The ride back to Roman's penthouse was silent, except for Maya's occasional sniffles as Luca drove her to a separate vehicle. Kara watched her best friend disappear into the night, relief and terror warring inside her chest. Maya was safe, but Kara wasn't. Roman sat beside her in the Mercedes, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body, but he might as well have been on another planet for all the warmth he showed. When they finally reached his building, Roman guided her into the private elevator with a hand on her lower back that felt more like a prisoner escort than a lover's touch. The penthouse was dark when they entered. Roman didn't bother turning on lights. He simply poured himself a glass of whiskey from the bar cart and stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Chicago's glittering skyline. Kara hovered near the elevator, uncertain whether she was allowed to move. "Come here," Roman said without turning around. Kara approached slowly, her heart hammering. Roman took a long drink of whiskey, then finally looked at her. "Do you know what the worst part of tonight was?" he asked quietly. Kara shook her head. "It wasn't the betrayal," Roman continued. "It wasn't even the fact that you handed O'Malley everything he needed to destroy me. The worst part was realizing that you never actually trusted me at all." The accusation landed like a blade between her ribs. "That's not true." "Isn't it?" Roman's voice remained dangerously calm. "I told you from the beginning that I protect what's mine. I proved it when I destroyed Damon in 12 hours. I showed you every single day that I would burn this city down for you. And the first time something threatened someone you loved, you decided I was incapable of helping." He turned to face her fully, and the pain beneath his anger was devastating. "You didn't trust me to save Maya," Roman said. "You trusted Connor, O'Malley's threats, more than my promises. So tell me, Bella, if you never believed I could protect you, what exactly were we doing together?" Kara's eyes burned with unshed tears. "I was scared." "Everyone's scared," Roman interrupted. "Fear doesn't excuse betrayal. Fear doesn't justify choosing the enemy over the man who would have died before letting anyone hurt you." He drained the rest of his whiskey and set the glass down with controlled precision. "I need you to understand something," Roman continued. "What you did tonight didn't just endanger me. It endangered everyone in my organization. The judges I've protected, the politicians who've taken my money, the business owners who rely on my protection. All of them are now vulnerable because you gave O'Malley the keys to my empire." Kara's throat closed. "I didn't think—" "Exactly," Roman said coldly. "You didn't think, you panicked, and now people are going to die because of it." He crossed to the bar and poured another whiskey, his movements deliberate and controlled. "Here's what's going to happen," Roman said. "You're going to stay here tonight. Tomorrow, my tech team will work on isolating the virus and minimizing the damage. If we're lucky, O'Malley won't have time to exploit what he stole before I shut it down. And if you're not lucky," Roman's smile was cold enough to freeze blood, "then I'm going to war, and you're going to watch me burn this city to the ground trying to clean up your mess." He drained the second glass and finally looked at her with something approaching emotion. "I want to hate you," Roman said quietly. "I want to look at you and feel nothing but rage. But the sick truth is that even after everything you did tonight, I still want you. And that's how I know you're dangerous, Bella, because you made me weak enough to forgive the unforgivable." Kara took a tentative step toward him. "Roman, don't touch me," he said sharply. "Not tonight. Not until I decide whether keeping you alive is worth the vulnerability you represent." The rejection stung worse than any physical blow. Roman moved past her toward his bedroom, then paused in the doorway. "Guest room is down the hall," he said, without looking back. "Use it, and pray that when I wake up tomorrow, I've found a reason to let you live." The door closed behind him with quiet finality. Kara stood alone in the dark penthouse, surrounded by the city lights that suddenly felt more like a prison than a kingdom. She'd saved Maya, but she'd lost Roman, and somehow that felt like the worst tragedy. Volk. Kara didn't sleep that night either. She lay in Roman's guest room staring at the ceiling while her mind replayed every moment of the past 48 hours. Every lie, every choice, every step that had led to this disaster. Around 4 in the morning, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Kara's blood went cold as she unlocked the screen. You did well, Miss Vale. The virus uploaded perfectly. Roman's secrets are mine now. Connor. O'Malley! Another message followed immediately. Your friend is safe, as promised, but I'm afraid your relationship with Roman is beyond repair. He'll never trust you again, which is unfortunate because you were quite useful. Kara's hands shook as she read the words. A third message appeared. Here's something to help you sleep tonight. I never actually had your friend. Those men in your apartment? Theater. Your roommate was never in danger. I just needed you scared enough to betray the one person who could have stopped me. The phone slipped from Kara's fingers. No, that couldn't be true. She'd seen Maya tied to that chair, seen the bruises on her face, heard her terrified voice. Kara's breath came in sharp, panicked gasps as the full horror of what Connor was saying crashed over her. It had all been fake. The threats, the torture, the deadline. Connor had manufactured the entire crisis specifically to make Kara betray Roman, and she'd fallen for it completely. Another message buzzed. Tell Roman I said thank you, for trusting you enough to let you get close, for being sloppy, for proving that even the most dangerous men become weak when they fall in love. Kara grabbed the phone and hurled it against the wall, watching it shatter into pieces. But destroying the phone couldn't destroy the truth. She hadn't saved Maya. Maya had never needed saving. Kara had betrayed Roman for nothing. The realization broke something fundamental inside her chest. She'd destroyed the one good thing in her life because she'd been too stupid, too scared, too willing to believe the worst instead of trusting the best. Roman had been right about everything. She'd never actually trusted him, and now she'd proven that she didn't deserve to. Kara pressed her palms against her face and sobbed until her throat was raw and her eyes burned, and nothing was left except the devastating certainty that she'd just made the worst mistake of her entire life. When dawn finally arrived in shades of gray and blood orange, Kara dragged herself out of bed and found Roman already awake in his home office. He looked up as she appeared in the doorway, and the emptiness in his expression made her want to die. I need to tell you something, Kara said, her voice hoarse from crying. Then tell me. Connor O'Malley sent me a message last night, she continued, each word feeling like swallowing glass. He said the whole thing was fake. The threats, the danger. Maya was never actually in trouble. He staged everything specifically to make me betray you. Roman's expression didn't change. I know. Kara's breath caught. You what? I know, Roman repeated calmly. My tech team analyzed the tactical footage from the meatpacking plant. Your friend's injuries were theatrical makeup. The zip ties were loose enough to slip. The entire basement scene was staged specifically for your benefit. He leaned back in his chair, studying her with clinical detachment. O'Malley played you perfectly, Bella, and you fell for it because you were so desperate to save your friend that you never stopped to question whether the threat was real. Kara's legs gave out. She collapsed to her knees right there in Roman's office doorway, her entire body shaking with the weight of her own stupidity. Why didn't you tell me? She gasped. Because I wanted to see if you'd figure it out yourself, Roman said. I wanted to know if you'd eventually realize you'd been manipulated. If you'd come to me with the truth instead of letting me discover it through my own investigation. He stood and crossed the office until he loomed over her broken form. And you did, Roman continued quietly. You came to me this morning and confessed what O'Malley told you, which means there might still be hope for you after all. Kara looked up at him through tears. I'm sorry. Stop apologizing, Roman interrupted. Sorry doesn't fix this. Sorry doesn't undo what you did. The only thing that matters now is what you do next. He crouched down until they were eye level. Here's the situation, Roman said. O'Malley has my files. He's going to use them to wage war against my organization. People are going to die. Territories are going to burn. And you're going to help me stop him. Kara's breath hitched. How? Roman's smile was cold and predatory. O'Malley thinks you're broken. Thinks you'll run back to your safe little life now that your relationship with me is destroyed. He doesn't expect you to fight back. Roman's hand shot out, gripping her chin and forcing her to meet his lethal gaze. So you're going to prove him wrong, Bella. You're going to walk back into his world, get close, earn his trust, and when the moment is right, you're going to help me destroy him from the inside. Horror flooded through Kara. You want me to be a spy? I want you to fix what you broke, Roman corrected. O'Malley played you once. Now you're going to return the favor. And if you succeed, I might consider forgiving you. And if I fail, Roman's expression went completely cold. Then you die alongside him, because I can't have liabilities walking around Chicago with my secrets in their heads. He released her chin and stood, returning to his desk like he'd just discussed the weather instead of threatening her life. You have until tonight to decide, Roman said without looking at her. Either you help me destroy O'Malley, or I eliminate you as a security risk. Those are your only options, Bella. Choose wisely. Kara knelt on Roman's office floor, her mind spinning with the impossible choice he'd just presented. Become a spy infiltrating one of Chicago's most dangerous criminal organizations, or die. Neither option offered escape. Neither option offered redemption, but only one gave her a chance to prove she was more than the scared, stupid woman who'd betrayed the only man who'd ever actually protected her. Kara rose to her feet on shaking legs, her tear-stained face hardening into something resembling determination. I'll do it, she said. Roman finally looked at her again, and something that might have been approval flickered across his brutal features. Good, he said, because Connor O'Malley is about to learn what happens when he underestimates a woman who has nothing left to lose. He opened a drawer and pulled out a small electronic device that looked like a modified cell phone. This is a secure communicator, Roman explained. Encrypted, untraceable. You'll use it to feed me information about O'Malley's operations, his locations, his contacts, his weaknesses. Kara took the device with trembling hands. How do I even get close to him? Roman's smile turned predatory. That's the beautiful part, Bella. You don't have to. O'Malley's going to come to you. He pulled up something on his computer screen and turned the monitor toward her. It showed a text message thread from Connor O'Malley's phone to Kara's number. You proved you're willing to betray Roman for the right motivation. I could use someone with your particular talents. Meet me tomorrow night. I'll send details. Kara's blood ran cold. He wants to recruit me. Of course he does, Roman said. You just handed him the keys to my kingdom. He thinks you're an asset worth cultivating, a potential long-term intelligence source. Roman's black eyes burned into hers. So you're going to let him believe exactly that. You're going to meet with O'Malley, pretend to be disillusioned with me, offer to continue feeding him information, and slowly, carefully, you're going to become the weapon I use to cut out his heart. The plan was insane, suicidal. Kara had never been a spy, never been trained for infiltration or deception. She was a graphic designer from downstate Illinois who'd somehow stumbled into Chicago's criminal underworld and made every possible wrong choice. But Roman was right about one thing. She had nothing left to lose. Her relationship with him was destroyed. Her trust was shattered. Her best friend had been used as a pawn in a game Kara barely understood. The only thing left was to prove she was more than the weak, scared woman everyone believed her to be. When do I start? Kara asked. Roman's expression softened almost imperceptibly. Tonight, he said. O'Malley will send you the meeting location this afternoon. You'll go alone. Wear a wire. Feed me everything he says. And whatever you do, don't let him see how terrified you actually are. He stood and crossed to her, stopping close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. One more thing, Roman said quietly. If at any point you feel like you're in immediate danger, say the phrase, I miss Chicago winters. I'll have an extraction team on you in under 90 seconds. Kara nodded, not trusting her voice. Roman's hand rose slowly, and for a moment Kara thought he might touch her face the way he used to. Instead, he simply tucked a strand of hair behind her ear with devastating gentleness. Don't die, Bella, he murmured. I'd hate to lose you right when you're finally becoming interesting. Then he stepped back, the moment of softness evaporating like it had never existed. Luca will take you home, Roman said, his voice returning to cold professionalism. Pack whatever you need. Say goodbye to your friend. Because once you walk into O'Malley's world, you can't come back until this is finished. Kara understood the subtext. She might not come back at all. That afternoon, Kara sat in her apartment while Maya packed a suitcase with shaking hands. Roman had arranged for Maya to stay at a secure location outside the city until the situation with O'Malley was resolved. For her own protection, for leverage, for all the reasons that made sense in the brutal logic of Chicago's underworld. "I don't understand what's happening," Maya said for the 10th time. "You're acting like you're going to war." "I am," Kara said quietly. She couldn't tell Maya the truth, couldn't explain that she was about to infiltrate an Irish crime syndicate as a spy for the Mafia boss she'd betrayed. So instead, she simply hugged her best friend and tried to memorize the feeling of safety before it disappeared entirely. "I'll be fine," Kara lied. "Roman's handling everything." Maya pulled back, searching Kara's face with worried eyes. "Do you love him?" The question caught Kara off guard. Did she love Roman Vescari? The man who'd claimed her with brutal certainty, who destroyed her enemies and worshipped her body, and then threatened to kill her when she betrayed him. The man who was currently using her as bait in a war that might consume them both. "I don't know," Kara admitted, "but I think I might be willing to die finding out." Maya's expression crumpled. "Please don't die." "I'll try not to." At exactly 6 o'clock, Kara's phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "Sullivan's Pub, 8 o'clock. Come alone. Don't be late. Connor." "O'Malley." Kara showed the message to Luca, who'd been stationed outside her apartment since morning. He nodded once and made a call. 30 minutes later, a tech specialist arrived to wire Kara with audio equipment so small it was practically invisible. A microphone disguised as a shirt button, a transmitter hidden in her bra, emergency beacon sewn into the lining of her jacket. If this went wrong, Roman would at least know where to find her body. At 7:30, Kara stood in front of her bathroom mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. Gone was the insecure graphic designer who'd walked into that charity gala wearing emerald silk and quiet self-hatred. In her place stood someone harder, someone who'd been broken and betrayed and forced to rebuild herself from pieces that no longer fit together the way they used to. Someone willing to walk into enemy territory with nothing but a wire and a prayer. Kara took a deep breath, straightened her shoulders, and headed toward Sullivan's Pub, toward Connor O'Malley, toward the point of no return where the only way out was through the violence waiting on the other side. Sullivan's Pub sat in the heart of Bridgeport like a relic from another century. Dark wood, stained glass. The kind of Irish establishment where generations of families had celebrated births and mourned deaths and conducted business that never made it into police reports. Kara pushed through the heavy oak door at exactly 8 o'clock, her heart hammering so violently she was certain everyone in the bar could hear it. The pub was surprisingly crowded for a weeknight. Working-class men hunched over pints of Guinness. A few couples occupied corner booths. Celtic music played softly from speakers hidden somewhere in the pressed tin ceiling. But everyone fell silent the moment Kara entered. Every eye in the room tracked her movement toward the back corner where Connor O'Malley sat alone in a private booth, a crystal tumbler of whiskey sitting untouched before him. He looked exactly as dangerous as she remembered, graying hair, cold blue eyes. The kind of face that suggested violence was a profession rather than a passion. Connor gestured to the seat across from him. "Miss Vale?" "Punctual. I appreciate that in an asset." Kara slid into the booth, her spine rigid with tension. The wire hidden beneath her clothes felt like it was burning against her skin. She was acutely aware that Roman was listening to every word through the encrypted receiver, that he had teams positioned throughout the neighborhood ready to extract her if this went wrong, that her life depended on selling this performance. "You said you wanted to meet," Kara said, keeping her voice steady. "So talk." Connor smiled, but the expression never reached his eyes. "Direct. I like that too." He finally lifted his whiskey and took a slow sip. "Tell me something, Miss Vale. How does it feel to betray the most dangerous man in Chicago?" "Necessary," Kara said flatly. "Roman Vescari is a monster who threatens people I care about. I did what I had to do." The lie tasted like ash on her tongue. Connor studied her face with unnerving intensity. "You're angry with him." "I'm terrified of him," Kara corrected. "There's a difference." "Is there?" Connor leaned forward slightly. "Because from where I sit, you uploaded that virus with remarkable efficiency. No hesitation, no second thoughts. That suggests anger more than fear." Kara forced herself to hold his gaze. Believe whatever you want. I'm here because your message said you could use someone with my talents. So either make your pitch or I'm leaving. Connor's smile widened. You've got spine. I respect that. He set down his glass and folded his hands on the table. Here's what I'm offering. You continue your relationship with Roman, play the repentant lover, feed him whatever pretty lies he needs to keep you close, and you report everything back to me. You want me to spy on him? I want you to be my eyes and ears inside Viscari's organization, Connor corrected. His movements, his weaknesses, his contingency plans. Everything you learn comes to me first. Kara let silence stretch between them while her mind raced. This was exactly what Roman had predicted. O'Malley wanted her as a long-term intelligence asset, someone close enough to Roman to gather information, expendable enough that her eventual discovery wouldn't cost O'Malley anything significant. What's in it for me? Kara asked. Protection, Connor said immediately. Roman will eventually discover what you did. When that happens, you'll need somewhere safe to run. I can provide that. New identity, new city, enough money to start over. And if I refuse, Connor's expression went cold. Then you become a liability I can't afford. And liabilities don't tend to live very long in our world. There it was, the threat wrapped in reasonable tones. Kara forced herself to lean back in the booth, projecting false confidence she didn't feel. I want $50,000 up front, she said, and guaranteed protection for my friend Maya. Those are my terms. Connor's eyebrows rose slightly. You negotiate. Interesting. I'm risking my life, Kara said. I want to make sure it's worth dying for. Connor considered her for a long moment, then nodded once. Agreed. 50,000 cash. Protection for your friend. In exchange, you feed me everything Roman does, says, and plans for the next 6 months. He extended his hand across the table. Do we have a deal, Miss Vale? Kara stared at his outstretched palm. This was the moment. Once she shook Connor O'Malley's hand, she was officially a double agent, working for the man she'd betrayed to destroy the man who'd manipulated her into betraying him. The insanity of it would have been funny if it wasn't so terrifying. Kara reached across the table and clasped Connor's hand firmly. Deal. Connor's grip was strong, possessive, designed to remind her exactly who held power in this arrangement. Excellent, he said, releasing her. You'll receive your first payment tomorrow. A burner phone will be included. Use it only to contact me. Never from Roman's properties. Never from anywhere he might have surveillance. Understood. One more thing, Connor added, his voice dropping lower. Roman Viscari is a paranoid man. He'll be watching you, testing you, looking for any sign that you've turned against him. So you need to be perfect, Miss Vale. No mistakes, no hesitation, because the moment he suspects you're working for me, you're dead. The words settled over Kara like a weighted blanket. I can handle Roman. Can you? Connor's smile turned predatory. Because I've seen what he does to traitors, and it's not quick. It's not merciful. He makes them suffer as an example to anyone else who might consider betraying him. He leaned forward until his face was inches from hers. So understand this clearly. You're mine now. You work for me. You report to me. And if you even think about running back to Roman and confessing this arrangement, I will make certain you watch everyone you love die before I finally grant you the mercy of joining them. Kara's throat constricted. But she forced herself to maintain eye contact. Are we done here? Connor leaned back, his pleasant mask sliding back into place. For now, I'll be in touch soon with your first assignment. Don't disappoint me, Miss Vale. Kara stood on shaking legs and walked out of Sullivan's pub without looking back. The moment she hit the street, Luca materialized from the shadows and guided her quickly toward a waiting Mercedes 3 blocks away. Kara climbed into the back seat, and the door had barely closed before Roman's voice crackled through the vehicle's speakers. You did well, Bella. Kara's entire body was trembling. He bought it? Completely, Roman confirmed. O'Malley thinks you're his asset now, which means we have him exactly where we want him. The car pulled smoothly into Chicago's nighttime traffic. What happens now? Kara asked. Now you come back to the penthouse, Roman said, and we prepare for the next phase. What? Roman was waiting when Kara stepped out of the private elevator an hour later. He looked exactly as dangerous as he had that morning. Charcoal suit, cold eyes, the kind of controlled violence that radiated from him like heat from a furnace. But when he looked at her, something shifted in his expression. "You survived," he said quietly. "Did you doubt I would?" "Yes." The honesty stung. Roman crossed the penthouse and stopped directly in front of her, close enough that she could see the exhaustion etched into the lines around his eyes. "O'Malley is dangerous," Roman said. "More dangerous than you realize, and now you're caught between us in a war that won't end until one of us is dead." "I know. Do you?" Roman's hand rose slowly, his rough fingers tracing the line of her jaw. "Because once this truly begins, there's no backing out. O'Malley will use you until you're no longer useful, then dispose of you like garbage. And if he discovers you're actually working for me, he'll torture you for information before he kills you." Kara met his black eyes without flinching. "Then we better make sure he doesn't discover it." Something that might have been admiration flickered across Roman's brutal features. "You're braver than I gave you credit for, Bella. Or more stupid. Perhaps both." Roman's thumb brushed across her bottom lip, and the unexpected gentleness of the gesture made Kara's breath catch. "I'm still angry with you," Roman said quietly, "for what you did, for not trusting me, for choosing fear over faith." "I know, but I also understand why you did it," he continued. "O'Malley played you perfectly, exploited every insecurity, every weakness. He knew exactly which buttons to push to make you betray me." His hand slid around to cup the back of her neck, holding her in place. "So here's what's going to happen," Roman murmured. "You're going to work for O'Malley, feed him information I give you, build his trust, and when the moment is right, you're going to help me put a bullet in his brain. And then? Then we decide if what we had is worth rebuilding." Roman's mouth claimed hers before she could respond. The kiss was brutal, possessive, tasting of whiskey and violence, and something that might have been forgiveness if Roman was capable of such weakness. When he finally pulled back, Kara's legs were shaking. "Go to bed," Roman ordered roughly. "Tomorrow, the real work begins." Joktamt. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of deception and danger. Kara met with Connor O'Malley twice more, each time feeding him carefully curated information that Roman had prepared. Locations of abandoned safe houses, names of low-level associates Roman was willing to sacrifice. Financial records that appeared damaging but actually revealed nothing. O'Malley couldn't have discovered through other means. Connor ate it up like a starving man. He increased Kara's payments, gave her more expensive technology, treated her like a prized asset instead of the disposable pawn she actually was. And all the while, Roman's teams moved silently through Chicago's underworld, dismantling O'Malley's operations piece by piece. Supply lines dried up. Allies mysteriously switched sides. Territories that had belonged to the Irish for decades suddenly came under Roman's control. O'Malley was hemorrhaging power, and he didn't even realize it was happening until the night everything exploded. Kara was in Roman's penthouse when the call came through. Roman's expression darkened as he listened to the voice on the other end, his jaw tightening with each passing second. When he finally hung up, the air in the room felt charged with violence. "What happened?" Kara asked. "O'Malley just discovered the information you've been feeding him was manufactured," Roman said flatly. "He sent men to raid a warehouse I told you was filled with weapons. It was empty. Now he knows you've been playing him." Kara's blood turned to ice. "How?" "He has a mole in my organization," Roman interrupted. "Someone who's been feeding him real intelligence alongside your false reports. And now O'Malley knows you're working for me." The world tilted sideways. "What do we do?" Roman's expression shifted into something lethal. "Now, we finish this." He crossed to his desk and pulled out a sleek black handgun, checking the magazine with practiced efficiency. "O'Malley is going to come for you," Roman continued. "He'll use you to draw me out, force a confrontation on his terms instead of mine. Then we need to hide." "No," Roman interrupted sharply. "We give him exactly what he wants, a confrontation, tonight, at a location of my choosing." He pulled out his phone and typed rapidly, sending a message that Kara couldn't see. "I'm telling O'Malley you're at the old grain elevator on the south side," Roman explained. "Abandoned, isolated, perfect for the kind of showdown he's been craving." "You're using me as bait." "I'm giving you a chance to prove you're more than a liability," Roman corrected. "O'Malley will bring his best men. I'll bring mine. And when the dust settles, one of us won't be walking away. Kara's heart hammered against her ribs. This is insane. This is war, Bella, and wars end when one side stops breathing. Roman crossed back to her and pressed the handgun into her trembling hands. You know how to use this? No. Then learn fast, Roman said. Point, squeeze, don't hesitate, because O'Malley's men won't. He pulled another weapon from the desk drawer for himself, then grabbed his phone again. Luca is assembling the teams now, Roman said. We move in 30 minutes. Stay close to me. Don't do anything stupid, and whatever happens, don't die. I'd hate to lose you right when you're finally becoming useful. The words might have been cruel if not for the way Roman looked at her when he said them, like she was the only thing in Chicago worth protecting. Check. The grain elevator loomed against Chicago's night sky like a monument to industrial decay. Rusted metal towers, broken conveyor belts, the kind of place the city had forgotten about decades ago and never bothered to demolish, perfect for the kind of business that happened in the dark. Roman's convoy arrived first, 6 vehicles spreading out in tactical formation around the structure. 20 armed men moved into position with military precision, their faces obscured by tactical gear and night vision equipment. Kara stood beside Roman near the main entrance, the weight of the handgun he'd given her pressing against her lower back where she'd tucked it into her waistband. Roman's hand rested on her shoulder, his grip firm and possessive. Stay behind me, he ordered, no matter what happens. And if things go wrong? Roman's smile was cold enough to freeze blood. Then we die together, Bella, which is more romantic than you deserve after betraying me. Before Kara could respond, headlights appeared in the distance. Connor O'Malley's convoy. Roman's men immediately raised their weapons, fingers resting against triggers. The vehicles stopped 50 feet away, and doors opened in synchronized motion. Connor. O'Malley emerged from the lead car, flanked by a dozen armed men who looked like they'd been pulled from military special forces. They moved with the kind of precision that suggested extensive training and zero hesitation about killing. Connor stopped halfway between the two groups, his expensive suit pristine despite the industrial grime surrounding them. Viscari, he called out, his voice carrying through the darkness. I have to admit, I'm impressed. Using your own woman as bait, that takes a special kind of ruthlessness. Roman stepped forward, pulling Kara with him. You tried to turn her against me, Roman called back. Used her fear, exploited her weaknesses. But you made one critical mistake, O'Malley. What's that? You assumed she was weak enough to stay bought. Connor's expression darkened. She betrayed you once. What makes you think she won't do it again? Because she understands something you never will, Roman said. Loyalty isn't bought with money or threats. It's earned through protection, through devotion, through making someone feel valued instead of expendable. He pulled Kara closer, his arm wrapping around her waist like steel. She's mine, O'Malley. She's always been mine, and you were too stupid to recognize it. Connor's cold blue eyes locked onto Kara. Is that true, Miss Vale? You chose him over me? Over safety and freedom and everything I offered? Kara's throat constricted. This was the moment, the final choice that would determine whether she lived or died. She could tell Connor she'd been forced, claim Roman was manipulating her, beg for mercy, or she could finally accept the truth she'd been running from since that first night in the library. Roman Viscari was brutal, possessive, and absolutely terrifying, but he'd also looked at her broken pieces and decided she was worth defending. Kara stepped forward, placing herself slightly in front of Roman in a gesture of protection that was probably meaningless but felt necessary anyway. I chose him, she said clearly, not because I had to, because I wanted to. Connor's face twisted with rage. You stupid bitch! I'm not the one who's stupid, Kara interrupted, her voice stronger now. You are, because you thought manipulation was stronger than devotion. You thought fear was more powerful than choice, and now you're about to learn exactly how wrong you were. The air between the two groups crackled with violence held on a hair trigger. Connor's hand moved toward the weapon at his waist. Roman's men raised their rifles in immediate response. Last chance, O'Malley, Roman called out. Walk away. Leave Chicago. Never come back, and I'll let you live. Connor laughed, harsh, bitter, furious. You really think I'm going to run from you? I've been waiting years for someone to finally challenge your reign. And now that I have everything I need to destroy you, you expect me to just leave? Yes, Roman said simply, because the alternative is dying here tonight. And I promise you, O'Malley, dying at my hands is not quick. It's not merciful. I make it last. Connor's face contorted with rage. Kill them all, he screamed. Chaos exploded. Gunfire erupted from both sides simultaneously, muzzle flashes lighting up the darkness like deadly fireworks. Roman grabbed Kara and yanked her behind one of the grain elevator's massive concrete support pillars as bullets shredded the air where they'd been standing seconds before. Stay down! Roman roared over the cacophony of automatic weapons fire. He leaned around the pillar and returned fire with brutal efficiency, each shot calculated and lethal. Kara pressed herself against the cold concrete, her heart hammering so violently she thought it might explode. The handgun Roman had given her felt impossibly heavy in her grip. Someone screamed nearby, one of Roman's men going down. More gunfire. More screaming. The smell of cordite and blood filled the air. Roman's voice crackled through the radiocom system his teams were using. Alpha team flank left. Beta take the high ground. No one gets out alive. Kara risked a glance around the pillar and immediately regretted it. Bodies littered the ground between the two groups, some moving, most not. Blood pooled on the concrete, reflecting the sporadic muzzle flashes like horrifying mirrors. This wasn't a confrontation. This was a massacre, and Kara was trapped in the middle of it. A figure suddenly appeared around the opposite side of the pillar, one of O'Malley's men, his weapon swinging toward Kara's face. Instinct took over. Kara raised the handgun Roman had given her and squeezed the trigger. The recoil shocked through her wrists, but the shot went wide. The man lunged forward, and Roman materialized like violence personified. He grabbed the attacker from behind, his knife appearing from nowhere, and sliding between the man's ribs with surgical precision. The body dropped. Roman turned to Kara, his face splattered with blood that wasn't his. Are you hit? No. Good. Stay close. He grabbed her wrist and pulled her deeper into the grain elevator's structure, away from the main firefight. They moved through corridors of rusted metal and broken machinery while gunfire echoed behind them. Roman's radio crackled constantly with updates. Team Alpha secured the east side. Beta's pinned down on the catwalk. O'Malley's retreating toward the... Roman cut through the chatter with cold authority. Lock down all exits. I want O'Malley alive. They burst through a doorway into the elevator's main processing chamber, a cavernous space filled with ancient machinery and catwalks spanning 50 feet above the ground. Connor O'Malley stood on the far side of the chamber, flanked by 3 remaining bodyguards. Blood stained his pristine suit. His cold blue eyes blazed with fury, and something that might have been fear. It's over, O'Malley, Roman called out, his weapon trained on the Irish boss. Your men are dead. Your escape routes are blocked. Surrender now and I'll make it quick. Connor laughed, a broken, desperate sound. You think this ends with me? He spat. I'm not the only one who wants you dead, Viscari. Kill me, and 10 more will rise to take my place. Then I'll kill them too, Roman said simply. One at a time. For as long as it takes. Because this city is mine, and anyone who challenges that ends up exactly like you're about to. Connor's eyes darted to Kara, standing slightly behind Roman. You did this, Connor snarled at her. You destroyed everything. Stupid whore actually fell in love with a monster. The words were still leaving his mouth when Roman fired. The shot caught Connor in the shoulder, spinning him backward. His bodyguards immediately raised their weapons, but Roman's teams burst through every entrance simultaneously. The firefight lasted exactly 8 seconds. When the smoke cleared, Connor's men were dead, and Connor himself knelt on the concrete floor, clutching his bleeding shoulder while Roman approached with lethal intent. Kara stood frozen near the doorway, unable to look away. Roman crouched in front of Connor, his weapon pressed against the Irish boss's forehead. Any last words? Roman asked conversationally. Connor's face twisted with rage and pain. Rotten hell. You first. Roman's finger tightened on the trigger. Wait! The shout came from Kara. Roman froze, his black eyes swinging toward her. What? Kara stepped forward, her legs shaking but her voice steady. Let me do it. Silence crashed through the chamber. Roman stared at her like he'd never seen her before. Bella. He used me, Kara interrupted, crossing the space between them. Manipulated me. Threatened Maya. Forced me to betray you. So let me be the one who ends him. Roman studied her face for a long moment, then slowly lowered his weapon. Are you certain? Kara extended her hand. Roman placed his gun in her palm. The weight felt different now, heavier, more permanent. Kara stood over Connor O'Malley, the man who'd orchestrated her betrayal, and felt absolutely nothing. No fear, no hesitation, no mercy. This is for making me believe I was weak, Kara said quietly. She pressed the barrel against Connor's forehead. And this is for teaching me I'm not. The shot echoed through the grain elevator like thunder. Connor. O'Malley collapsed backward, dead before he hit the concrete. Kara stood over his corpse, the smoking weapon still gripped in both hands, her entire body trembling with adrenaline and something that felt dangerously close to satisfaction. Roman approached slowly, gently removing the gun from her shaking grip. How do you feel? He asked quietly. Kara looked down at Connor's lifeless eyes and felt the weight of what she'd just done settle over her like a shroud. She'd killed a man, not in self-defense, not by accident, but deliberately, coldly, as execution rather than survival. I feel... Kara's voice broke. Roman pulled her against his chest, his arms wrapping around her while his men moved through the chamber, securing the scene. It's over, he murmured against her hair. You survived. We survived. Everything else is just noise. But Kara knew better. This wasn't over, because she'd just discovered exactly what she was capable of when pushed far enough. And that knowledge changed everything. Roman's radio crackled one final time. All hostiles eliminated, area secure, awaiting orders. Roman's grip on Kara tightened as he responded. Clean this place. Burn the bodies. Make it look like an industrial accident. No witnesses, no evidence, nothing that traces back to us. A chorus of confirmations echoed back. Roman finally pulled away from Kara, his black eyes searching her face. Can you walk? Kara nodded numbly. Roman guided her out of the grain elevator, through corridors now littered with bodies and spent shell casings, past his men who were already beginning the grim work of disposal. The night air felt sharp and clean after the cordite-heavy atmosphere inside. Roman's Mercedes waited near the entrance, untouched by the violence that had consumed the structure behind them. Luca opened the door, his expression carefully neutral despite the blood staining Roman's clothes. Roman guided Kara into the back seat and slid in beside her. The car pulled smoothly away from the grain elevator as flames began licking through the structure's broken windows. Chicago's underworld would whisper about this night for years. About the Irish boss who'd challenged Roman Viscari and ended up burning alive in an abandoned industrial accident. About the woman who'd betrayed Roman, then saved him, then executed his enemy without hesitation. About the message sent to anyone else who might consider challenging Chicago's most dangerous sovereign. Kara leaned against Roman's chest as the city blurred past the tinted windows, her mind replaying the moment she'd pulled that trigger over and over until it stopped feeling real. What happens now? She whispered. Roman's hand stroked through her hair with unexpected gentleness. Now we go home, he said quietly. Now we rebuild. Now we decide if what we have is worth the blood it costs to keep. Kara closed her eyes and tried to remember what she'd been like before that charity gala, before Damon's cruelty and Roman's obsession and Connor's manipulation had reshaped her into someone capable of cold-blooded execution. But that woman felt like a stranger now, someone weak, scared, apologizing for taking up space. The woman Kara had become tonight was something else entirely, something harder, something dangerous, something that finally understood what Roman had known from the beginning. In Chicago's underworld, you either became a predator or you became prey. And Kara Vale had just discovered she preferred having teeth. The Mercedes pulled up to Roman's building as dawn began breaking over Lake Michigan. Roman guided Kara into the private elevator, his hand possessive on her lower back. When they finally reached the penthouse, Roman poured himself a whiskey and stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the awakening city. Kara joined him silently, her reflection ghostly in the glass. I killed him, she said quietly. Yes. I looked him in the eyes and pulled the trigger. You did. And I don't feel guilty. Roman turned to face her, his black eyes reflecting something that might have been pride. Good, he said simply. Because guilt is for people who regret their choices. And you made the right one tonight, Bella. You chose survival. You chose power. You chose me. His hand rose to cup her face, thumb tracing the line of her jaw. You're not the same woman who walked into that charity gala 3 weeks ago, Roman continued. That woman was broken, scared, convinced she was too much for any room she entered. But the woman standing in front of me now? His smile turned predatory. She's a queen who just learned she's been wearing a crown the entire time. Kara met his gaze without flinching. What if I don't want to be a queen in your world? Then you're lying to yourself, Roman said, because I saw your face when you pulled that trigger. You felt powerful. You felt vindicated. You felt like you finally stopped apologizing for existing. He leaned closer, his breath ghosting across her lips. That's what I've been trying to show you from the beginning, Bella. You were never too much. The world was just too small to contain you. Roman kissed her then. Brutal, possessive, tasting of whiskey and violence and promises neither of them knew if they could keep. When he finally pulled back, Kara's legs were shaking for entirely different reasons than before. Get some sleep, Roman murmured. Tomorrow we start rebuilding what O'Malley tried to destroy, and you're going to help me do it. It wasn't a request. It was a declaration of partnership forged in blood and betrayal, and something that might have been love if either of them knew how to define it. Kara nodded and turned toward the bedroom, but Roman's voice stopped her at the doorway. Kara. She looked back. Roman stood silhouetted against the awakening city, his expression unreadable. I meant what I said that first night in the library, he said quietly. You're mine. Completely. Permanently. No exceptions. And after tonight, the entire city knows it. Kara held his gaze for a long moment, then smiled. Dark, dangerous, finally accepting the truth she'd been running from since the moment Roman Viscari had found her crying in the dark. Good, she said simply. Then she disappeared into the bedroom, leaving Chicago's most ruthless sovereign standing alone in the dawn light, a man who'd just discovered that claiming a broken woman and teaching her she was never actually broken at all might be the most dangerous thing he'd ever done, because Kara Vale had finally stopped apologizing for taking up space. And women who stopped apologizing became absolutely unstoppable. Kara woke to sunlight streaming through Roman's bedroom windows, and the distant sound of Lake Michigan lapping against the shoreline far below. Her body ached in places she didn't know could hurt. Muscles strained from tension, shoulders knotted from the recoil of a weapon she'd fired without hesitation. Hands still trembling slightly from the memory of what they'd done. She'd killed a man last night. The thought should have devastated her, should have sent her spiraling into guilt and horror and all the emotions her therapist had once promised would come if she ever crossed that ultimate line. But all Kara felt was empty. Not hollow, not broken, just clean, like she'd finally purged something toxic that had been living inside her for years. The bedroom door opened quietly, and Roman appeared carrying a tray with coffee and what looked like breakfast from one of Chicago's exclusive bakeries. He was already dressed in a fresh suit, his dark hair still damp from a shower, looking like a man who hadn't spent the previous night orchestrating a massacre. "You're awake," he said, setting the tray on the nightstand. Kara sat up slowly, pulling the silk sheets around herself. "How long did I sleep?" 6 hours. Roman settled onto the edge of the bed, his black eyes searching her face with unnerving intensity. "How do you feel?" The question was loaded with meanings neither of them wanted to examine too closely. "Like I became someone else last night," Kara admitted quietly. "Someone I don't entirely recognize." Roman's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "You became who you always were underneath the fear," he said. "O'Malley didn't create that woman. Damon didn't destroy her. She was always there, Bella, just waiting for someone to show her she didn't need permission to exist." He reached out and tucked a strand of her dark hair behind her ear with surprising gentleness. "The question is whether you can live with her now that you've met." Kara considered this while she wrapped her hands around the coffee cup, letting the warmth seep into her still trembling fingers. Could she live with the woman who'd executed Connor O'Malley without hesitation? The woman who'd looked into a dying man's eyes and felt satisfaction instead of remorse? "I don't know," she admitted, "but I don't think I have a choice anymore." "Everyone has choices," Roman said. You could leave right now. Walk away from me, from this life, from everything that happened. Start over somewhere O'Malley's name means nothing and mine means even less. The offer hung between them like smoke. Kara studied Roman's face, looking for the trap hidden beneath his words. But all she saw was exhaustion, and something that might have been hope if Roman Vescari was capable of such vulnerability. Is that what you want? Kara asked. For me to leave? Roman's jaw tightened, a muscle jumping beneath his skin. I want you to choose me because you want to, he said roughly. Not because you're afraid of me. Not because you feel obligated after what we survived. I want you to look at the monster sitting beside you and decide he's worth the darkness that comes with him. His hand moved to cup her face, thumb tracing the line of her cheekbone. But I won't trap you here, Bella. You've been caged by men who pretended to love you while they slowly destroyed you. I refuse to become another prison you're trying to escape. The honesty in his voice cracked something open inside Kara's chest, because Roman Vescari, Chicago's most feared mafia sovereign, a man who'd killed without hesitation and built an empire on blood, was giving her the one thing no man ever had: real choice. Not the illusion of freedom wrapped in manipulation, not the threat of consequences disguised as concern. Just pure, terrifying choice. Kara set down her coffee and turned to face Roman fully, meeting his black eyes without flinching. I killed a man last night, she said quietly. Not in self-defense. Not by accident. I looked Connor O'Malley in the eyes and chose to end his life. And the only thing I regret is that I didn't do it sooner. Roman's expression remained carefully neutral. That makes you dangerous, he said. It makes me yours, Kara corrected, because the woman I was 3 weeks ago would have run screaming from what we did last night. But the woman I am now? She understands that sometimes the only way to stop being prey is to become a predator. She leaned forward until her forehead rested against his. So yes, Roman, I choose you. I choose this darkness. I choose to stop apologizing for taking up space and start claiming the room instead. Roman's arms wrapped around her with bruising intensity, pulling her against his chest like she might disappear if he loosened his grip. Then you're mine, he murmured against her hair. Completely. Permanently. And I will burn this entire city down before I let anyone take you from me again. The possessiveness should have frightened her. Instead, Kara felt something settle inside her chest that might have been peace if either of them knew what that word actually meant. They stayed like that for a long moment while Chicago woke up outside the penthouse windows, completely unaware that its underworld had fundamentally shifted overnight. Finally, Roman pulled back. There's something you need to see, he said, standing and offering his hand. Kara took it without hesitation, allowing him to guide her out of the bedroom and into his home office. The space looked different in daylight, less menacing, more like what it actually was, the command center of a criminal empire that spanned half the Midwest. Roman crossed to his desk and pulled up something on his computer screen. O'Malley's death was reported as an industrial accident, he explained. Gas leak at an abandoned grain elevator, 12 casualties, no suspects. The police have already closed the investigation. He pulled up another screen showing financial transfers. His territories have been redistributed among families loyal to me. His remaining associates have either pledged allegiance or disappeared, and every piece of intelligence he stole from my servers was corrupted beyond recovery before he could use it. Roman turned to face her, his expression unreadable. You understand what this means? O'Malley was my last significant challenger in Chicago. With him gone, I control everything. And that makes you the most dangerous woman in the city, Bella, because everyone knows you're mine. Which means anyone who wants to hurt me will come for you first. The warning settled over Kara like a weighted blanket. So what do? We adapt, Roman said. I'm moving you into the penthouse permanently, assigning personal security, teaching you how to defend yourself properly so what happened last night doesn't rely on luck and adrenaline. He crossed back to her, his hands settling on her shoulders. You're not a liability anymore, Kara. You're my partner, my equal, the queen standing beside Chicago's king, and that means learning to rule instead of merely surviving. The declaration should have been overwhelming. But Kara simply nodded, accepting the weight of what Roman was offering, because she'd spent 3 years with Damon being told she was too much, too loud, too big, too wrong. And she'd spent 3 weeks with Roman learning that she wasn't too much at all, The world had just been too small to contain her. "When do we start?" Kara asked. Roman's smile turned predatory. "Right now." Sam. The next month transformed Kara in ways she couldn't have imagined. Roman kept his promise. He moved her belongings into the penthouse piece by piece until her apartment in Lincoln Park felt like a memory of someone else's life. He assigned her 2 personal bodyguards who followed at a discreet distance wherever she went. And 3 times a week, he took her to a private shooting range where she learned to handle weapons with the same casual efficiency Roman displayed. But more than the physical changes, something fundamental shifted inside Kara herself. She stopped flinching when Roman touched her unexpectedly, stopped apologizing when she took up space in a room, stopped shrinking herself to make other people comfortable. She attended galas on Roman's arm wearing couture designed to celebrate rather than conceal her curves, and when people stared, she stared back until they looked away first. She sat in on business meetings where Roman negotiated territory disputes and financial arrangements with men who'd spent decades in Chicago's underworld, and she contributed ideas that Roman actually implemented. She became exactly what he'd promised that first night in the library, a queen who'd finally realized she'd been wearing a crown the entire time. Maya visited twice during those first weeks, each time looking more uncomfortable in the penthouse's luxury than the last. "You're different," Maya said during her second visit, watching Kara move through Roman's space with the confidence of someone who belonged there. "Not bad different, just harder." Kara poured them both wine from Roman's extensive collection and settled onto the couch overlooking the city. "I killed a man," she said quietly. "That changes you." Maya's eyes went wide. "You... what?" "Connor O'Malley, the Irish boss who threatened you. Roman gave me the choice to end him, and I took it." Silence stretched between them while Maya processed this information. "Do you regret it?" she finally asked. Kara considered the question honestly. Did she regret putting a bullet in Connor O'Malley's brain? Regret choosing violence over mercy? Regret becoming the kind of woman capable of cold-blooded execution? "No," Kara said simply. "I regret that it took me so long to realize I was strong enough to do it." Maya stared at her best friend like she was looking at a stranger. "I don't know if I know you anymore," Maya whispered. The words hurt more than Kara expected. Because Maya was right. The woman sitting in Roman Viscari's penthouse wearing designer clothes and casual violence like armor wasn't the same person who'd fled from Damon Pierce's cruelty 3 months ago. That woman was gone. And Kara wasn't entirely sure she mourned her loss. "I'm still me," Kara said quietly. "Just the version of me that stopped apologizing for existing." Maya finished her wine in one long swallow and stood. "I hope you know what you're doing," she said. "Because Roman Viscari is dangerous, Kara, and the longer you stay in his world, the harder it's going to be to leave." "Maybe I don't want to leave." Maya's expression crumpled with something that looked like grief. "Then I guess this is goodbye," she said. "Because I can't watch you become someone I don't recognize anymore." The words landed like physical blows. Kara wanted to argue, to explain, to make Maya understand that she wasn't losing herself in Roman's darkness. She was finally finding the parts of herself that men like Damon had spent years trying to destroy. But Maya was already heading toward the elevator, and Kara let her go. Because some people couldn't understand that breaking apart was sometimes necessary before you could rebuild yourself into something stronger. The elevator doors closed on Maya's retreating form, and Kara stood alone in the penthouse feeling the weight of that loss settle over her like ash. Roman found her there an hour later, still staring at the closed elevator doors. "She left," he observed. "Yes." "Are you all right?" Kara turned to face him, and Roman must have seen something in her expression because his own features softened. "Losing people hurts," he said quietly, "even when it's necessary." "How do you live with it?" Kara asked. "Knowing that choosing this life means losing everyone who can't understand it?" Roman crossed to her and pulled her against his chest, his arms wrapping around her with surprising gentleness. "You build new connections," he said. "Find people who understand the darkness instead of running from it. Create a family that's forged in loyalty rather than blood." He pressed a kiss against her temple. "You're not alone, Bella. You have me. And I promise you, I will never leave. I will never diminish you. And I will never make you feel like loving me was a mistake." Kara closed her eyes and let herself sink into his embrace. Because Roman was right. She'd lost Maya, lost the safety of her old life, lost the illusion that she could ever go back to being the woman she was before that charity gala. But she'd gained something infinitely more valuable. She'd gained herself. 3 months after Connor. O'Malley's death, Kara stood in the penthouse bathroom staring at her reflection and barely recognized the woman looking back. Gone was the quiet insecurity that had defined her for years. The hunched shoulders, the apologetic smile, the way she'd made herself small to avoid taking up too much space. The woman in the mirror stood tall, confident. Her dark hair was swept up in an elegant twist that showed off the diamond earrings Roman had given her last week. Her crimson dress hugged curves she'd spent years hating, and now she wore them like armor. She looked powerful, dangerous, exactly like the kind of woman who belonged beside Chicago's most feared sovereign. A knock on the bathroom door interrupted her reflection. "Bella," Roman called. "We're going to be late." They were attending another charity gala tonight, this one benefiting children's hospitals throughout the city. The same kind of event where she'd first met Roman, where Damon had humiliated her, where everything had started spiraling toward this moment. Kara took a deep breath and opened the door. Roman stood in the hallway wearing a tuxedo that probably cost more than her first car, and the expression on his face when he saw her made something warm bloom in her chest. "You're devastating," he murmured, crossing to her and pulling her against him. "Every man in that ballroom is going to wish he was me tonight." "And every woman is going to wish she was me," Kara countered. Roman's smile turned predatory. "They already do, Bella. You just finally believe it." They took the private elevator down to the parking garage where Luca waited with the Mercedes. The drive to the Heritage Crown Hotel felt surreal. This was the same venue where Kara had fled from Damon's cruelty 3 months ago, where she'd hidden in that library crying over her own perceived inadequacies, where Roman Vescari had found her and decided she was worth defending. So much had changed since that night. Everything had changed since that night. The Mercedes pulled up to the main entrance, and Luca opened the door with professional efficiency. Roman stepped out first, then offered his hand to Kara. She took it without hesitation, allowing him to guide her out of the vehicle and into the glittering chaos of Chicago's elite gathering for their monthly performance of charity and social climbing. The effect was immediate. Conversations died mid-sentence. Champagne glasses froze halfway to painted lips. Every eye in the entrance hall locked onto them, with expressions ranging from terror to fascination to barely concealed envy, because everyone in Chicago knew who they were now. Roman Vescari and the woman who'd helped him eliminate his last significant rival, the king and his queen. Kara felt the weight of those stares, but this time they didn't make her want to disappear. This time she met them head-on with a confidence that came from knowing exactly what she was capable of. Roman guided her through the crowd with possessive certainty, his hand never leaving her lower back. People parted for them like the sea before a storm, and Kara could hear the whispers following in their wake. "That's her. Killed Connor O'Malley. Vescari's woman. Dangerous!" The words should have frightened her. Instead, Kara felt powerful. They entered the main ballroom, and Kara's breath caught. This was the same room where Damon had cornered her, where he'd called her fat, where he'd spent years of accumulated cruelty into a few venomous sentences designed to make her feel worthless. But Damon wasn't here tonight. Damon was serving 15 years in federal prison for money laundering and fraud, his entire life dismantled by the man currently holding Kara like she was the only thing in the room worth protecting. Roman felt her tension and leaned down to murmur against her ear. "You're not the same woman who ran from this room crying," he said quietly. "You're the woman who came back wearing a crown. Remember that." Kara nodded, forcing herself to breathe through the memories trying to drag her backward. They made their way through the ballroom, Roman stopping occasionally to exchange terse greetings with business associates and political figures who clearly feared him more than they respected him. And everywhere they went, people stared at Kara with expressions that ranged from awe to terror to something that looked disturbingly like admiration. Because she'd become exactly what Roman promised that first night, a queen who'd finally stopped apologizing for taking up space. They were near the champagne fountain when a familiar face emerged from the crowd. Kara's stomach dropped. It was one of Damon's former colleagues, a wealth manager named Richard who'd witnessed her humiliation at the last gala, who'd stood silently while Damon destroyed her self-worth with surgical precision. Richard approached with visible nervousness, his expensive suit unable to hide the fear radiating from him. "Miss Vale," he said carefully, "I wanted to apologize for what happened at the last event. Damon's behavior was inexcusable, and I should have intervened." Kara studied him with cold assessment. This man had watched her cry, had done nothing, had probably laughed about it later over expensive scotch with his equally worthless friends. "You're right," Kara said calmly. "You should have intervened, but you didn't, because men like you only care about cruelty when it might affect you personally." Richard's face flushed. "I understand if you're angry." "I'm not angry," Kara interrupted. "I'm indifferent. You and everyone like you stopped mattering to me the moment I realized I didn't need your approval to exist." She stepped closer, and Richard actually flinched. "So here's what's going to happen," Kara continued softly. "You're going to walk away from me. You're going to forget I exist. And if you ever see me again, you're going to remember that the woman you watched Damon humiliate is the same woman who put a bullet in Connor O'Malley's brain without hesitation." The threat was clear. Richard went pale and practically fled back into the crowd. Roman's hand tightened on Kara's waist, and she could feel him trying not to laugh. "That was vicious, Bella. I learned from the best." They spent the rest of the evening circulating through the gala, and Kara watched Roman work with newfound appreciation. He wasn't just a criminal, he was a politician, a businessman, a strategist who understood that real power came from knowing when to use violence and when to use charm. And he never once tried to diminish her. When people spoke to Roman, he made certain they acknowledged Kara as well. When business associates tried to talk around her, Roman redirected the conversation until she was included. When someone made the mistake of treating her like decorative arm candy, Roman's expression went cold enough to freeze blood. Because Roman Vescari didn't keep ornamental women. He kept equals. Near midnight, they stepped out onto the hotel's private balcony overlooking Chicago's glittering skyline. The night air was cool against Kara's bare shoulders, and she breathed deeply, letting the city's energy wash over her. Roman stood beside her, his hands braced against the marble railing. "What are you thinking?" he asked quietly. Kara considered the question while watching traffic flow through the streets far below. "I'm thinking about the woman who came to this hotel 3 months ago," she said. "How broken she was. How convinced she was that men like Damon were right about her." She turned to face Roman fully. "And I'm thinking about how grateful I am that you found her crying in that library. Because you didn't try to fix her. You just showed her she was never actually broken." Roman's expression softened in the ambient light. "You fixed yourself, Bella. I just provided the mirror that let you see what you'd always been." He pulled her against him, and Kara went willingly, resting her head against his chest while his heartbeat thundered beneath her ear. "I love you," she said quietly. The words hung between them like smoke. Kara hadn't meant to say them, hadn't planned this moment, or rehearsed the declaration. But standing there overlooking the city, Roman ruled, wrapped in his arms after surviving everything they'd endured together, the truth simply spilled out. Roman went completely still. Then his hand slid up to cup the back of her head, tilting her face toward his. "Say it again," he commanded roughly. "I love you," Kara repeated, meeting his black eyes without fear. "I love your darkness. I love your violence. I love that you looked at my broken pieces and decided they were worth defending. I love you, Roman Vescari, completely, permanently, no exceptions." Something devastating flickered across Roman's brutal features. "I've killed men for less than what I feel for you," he said quietly. "Destroyed lives, burned entire territories to the ground, and I would do it again without hesitation if it meant keeping you safe." He pressed his forehead against hers. "I love you, Bella. More than power, more than this city, more than anything I've ever built or claimed or conquered. You are the only thing in this world that could bring me to my knees." Then he kissed her. Brutal, possessive, tasting of champagne and promises neither of them knew if they could keep but were willing to die trying. When they finally broke apart, Chicago glittered below them like a kingdom waiting to be claimed. "What happens now?" Kara asked. Roman's smile turned predatory. "Now we rule," he said simply. "Together, as equals, as partners, as the king and queen this city has been waiting for. He pulled a small velvet box from his tuxedo pocket, and Kara's breath caught. Inside was a ring, a massive ruby surrounded by diamonds that probably cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. "This isn't a proposal," Roman said quietly, "because you already chose me the night you put a bullet in O'Malley. This is a declaration, a promise, a symbol that everyone in Chicago will recognize." He slid the ring onto her finger with devastating certainty. "You're mine, Cara Vale, and I'm yours. And anyone who tries to come between us will learn exactly why people fear my name." Cara stared at the ring glittering on her hand, a territorial claim disguised as jewelry, a statement that she belonged to Chicago's most dangerous sovereign. And instead of feeling trapped, she felt free. Because being claimed by a man who worshipped her darkness was infinitely better than being broken by men who feared her light. "Then let them come," Cara said, meeting Roman's eyes with fierce determination. "Let them try to take what's ours, and we'll show them exactly what happens when they underestimate a queen who's finally learned she's been wearing a crown the entire time." Roman's laugh was dark and genuinely delighted. "That's my girl," he murmured. Then he kissed her again while Chicago spread out below them like conquered territory, completely unaware that its most ruthless sovereign had just found the one thing powerful enough to make him vulnerable, and that the woman who'd once run crying from a charity gala had transformed into something far more dangerous than any of them could have imagined. 6 months later, Cara stood in Roman's penthouse office reviewing financial reports for his legitimate business holdings when her phone buzzed with a news alert. She unlocked the screen absently, then froze. Damon Pierce found dead in federal prison. Her hands shook as she read the full article. Damon had been killed by another inmate during a fight in the prison yard, stabbed 17 times, dead before the guards could intervene. The article called it a tragic example of prison violence, but Cara knew better. She turned slowly to find Roman standing in the doorway, his expression carefully neutral. "Did you?" she started. "He hurt you?" Roman interrupted quietly. "Made you hate yourself. Spent years trying to convince you that you were unworthy of love. So yes, Bella, I made certain he paid for that. Not immediately, not obviously, but eventually everyone who harms you answers to me." The declaration should have horrified her. Instead, Cara felt only a profound sense of closure. Damon Pierce had spent 3 years systematically destroying her self-worth, and now he was gone, erased, eliminated by the man who'd shown Cara she was never actually broken at all. "Thank you," she said quietly. Roman crossed the office and pulled her against him. "You never have to thank me for protecting you," he murmured. "That's what I do. That's what I'll always do. Because you're mine, and I guard what's mine with blood." Cara pressed her face against his chest and breathed in his familiar scent. Expensive cologne mixed with the metallic edge of violence that never quite went away. "I used to be so scared of you," she admitted. "And now?" Cara pulled back just enough to meet his eyes. "Now I know that the only thing scarier than Roman Viscari's darkness is living without it." Roman's smile was devastating. "Then I guess we're both exactly where we're supposed to be." They stood like that for a long moment, while Chicago hummed with life outside the penthouse windows, a city that belonged to them now in ways neither had anticipated, but both had earned through blood and betrayal and the kind of devotion that looked like obsession to everyone who didn't understand it. Later that evening, Cara stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Michigan, while Roman conducted business in his office. The ruby ring on her finger caught the light, and she found herself thinking about the woman she'd been just 6 months ago. That woman would have been terrified of everything Cara had become. The violence, the ruthlessness, the casual way she now discussed territorial disputes and financial leverage like they were normal dinner conversation. But that woman had also been dying inside. Slowly, piece by piece, destroyed by men who'd convinced her that taking up space was something to apologize for. The woman Cara had become understood something fundamental that her former self never had. Sometimes the only way to stop being prey was to become a predator. Sometimes love looked like obsession to people who'd never experienced devotion. And sometimes a woman needed to be broken apart completely before she could rebuild herself into something powerful enough to claim her own crown. Cara heard Roman's footsteps behind her, then felt his arms wrap around her waist as he pulled her back against his chest. "What are you thinking about?" he murmured against her hair. "About how far I've come," Kara said quietly. "About the woman who ran crying from that library. About everything we survived to get here." Roman's grip tightened. "Do you regret any of it?" Kara considered the question honestly. Did she regret uploading that virus? Regret the betrayal that had almost destroyed them? Regret killing Connor O'Malley? Regret becoming someone capable of violence? "No," she said finally. "Because all of it was necessary. The betrayal taught me that trust has to be earned, not demanded. The violence taught me that survival sometimes requires brutality. And loving you taught me that I was never too much. The world was just too small to contain me." She turned in his arms until she could see his face. "You once told me that I'd become unstoppable the moment I realized I was never the problem," Kara said. "And you were right. I spent years letting men like Damon convince me I needed to shrink myself. But you showed me something different." Roman's black eyes burned into hers with devastating intensity. "What did I show you, Bella?" Kara smiled, dark, dangerous, finally accepting the truth she'd been running from since that first night when Roman Viscari had found her crying in the darkness and decided she was worth defending. "You showed me that queens don't apologize for wearing crowns," she said. "They just burn down anyone stupid enough to try taking them." Roman's laugh was genuine and devastating. "That's my girl," he murmured. Then he kissed her while Chicago glittered below them like a conquered kingdom, completely unaware that its most ruthless sovereign had found something more valuable than power. He'd found a woman who looked at his darkness and chose to rule beside him anyway. And Cara Vale, the woman who'd once hidden from charity galas and believed every cruel word whispered about her body, had finally learned the truth that changed everything. She was never too much. She'd just been surrounded by people too small to appreciate her magnitude. But standing there in Roman Viscari's arms, overlooking a city that trembled at the mention of his name, wrapped in the kind of devotion that looked like obsession to everyone who didn't understand it, Cara finally felt something she'd spent her entire life chasing. She felt powerful, she felt worthy, she felt free. Because a woman becomes truly unstoppable the moment she stops apologizing for taking up space and starts claiming the entire room instead. And as Chicago's lights reflected in the penthouse windows like scattered diamonds against black velvet, Cara understood with perfect clarity that this was exactly where she was always meant to be. Not hiding in shadows, not shrinking herself for men too weak to handle her strength, but standing tall beside the most dangerous man in the Midwest, wearing violence like jewelry and darkness like a second skin, finally understanding that she'd been a queen all along. She just needed someone ruthless enough to show her the crown had always been there, waiting, ready, hers.